Happy Saturday morning, everybody. Well, for those of you who are enjoying it as a Saturday morning, um, not to exclude those who may not have been to bed yet or are experiencing Saturday evening. Um, Welcome to the show. This is one's going to be a little bit different. Joining me today is going to be Wilberforce, fan of the show, and an occasional guest. He's been on before, I think, at least one time before.
Once, I think.
Once
Yeah.
before, yeah. Anyway, he brought this to my attention. Asked me about it a couple weeks back. Mark Reed had popped into a live room hosted by Praise I Am over there, and that's not uncommon. Praise is always hosting live hangouts and stuff, and some of them go on for anywhere from 3 to 9 hours, depending on how long he leaves his connection open. But this one got pretty heated. It's a unique group of some particularly toxic people and opinions, and Mark Reed decided to go wade in and I don't know, maybe disabuse them of some of their notions. I'm not exactly sure. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's a bit rough. So there are some warnings on this one in particular. This one's not monetized in any way because there's absolutely no way that it really could be. Let me switch.
Yeah, honestly, even if the stuff they said didn't get you demonetized, my response to them would.
Might.
So.
And with that, I will give everybody a warning. There's really no context to this other. It's one of Praise's streams. People know Praise from, if you've watched my show, he's popped up before. He's had disputes and he's befriended Darth Dawkins and been rebuked by Darth Dawkins and all this other kind of stuff. Darth does not make an appearance here, though. At least he better not. Now, I don't know how many people weigh in on this, but Mark is kind of taking a position where he's sort of trying to defend trans rights amongst this group of hysterics. And Ginger Nation is in there, or Q. He's trying to make a few points, and he barely gets a word in edgewise. Most of this is derailed by Jason Ezard, who I think is completely hammered off of his ass. I think he's not rational when he's sober, although it's hard for me to tell when he is drunk. My brother has had more dealings with him, and I was telling him about this one, and he's like, "Oh yeah, Jason's completely blitzed. He's just gone." So that might explain some of it, because there's a couple points where he's like trying to overtalk Will Kincaid, and I think Will Kincaid is actually trying to agree with him. That's just Jason.
Yeah.
So So I guess that's just par for the course. Anyway, welcome to everybody in the live chat. Thanks everybody for being here. I am still trying to fix the damage that that other software caused, because holy shit, what a pile of crap.
Well, it's kind of frustrating because it was literally working great right up until you want to go live.
Yeah, and I don't know what that. I mean, it's a weird setup. It's kind of like, I mean, it's StreamYard, but it's more like an OBS Lite kind of thing, and it's set up more for doing event casting. So it's kind of set up for multiple feeds and things like that, which normally wouldn't be a problem if you're just doing a single feed or whatever, which it has options for. It should, but it's still a work in progress. I don't even know who makes the damn thing. But I had seen it before in different head-to-head comparisons with other things like Restream and StreamYard and stuff, and it always had these good features in it. And I'd used it once before, and it worked okay. But I just kind of impromptu did one with my brother. We reviewed something from Jill, fired it up, got it working, kind of limped through it. It was a little awkward, but it worked okay. So for this one, I decided I'll try it again. I'll schedule in advance. Thought that would work. It did not. So glad it's free. Anyway, that being said, so apologies for the delays, everybody. Hello to everybody here. Good morning. Let's see. Michael Deaton, good to see you. Peter, good to see you. Jadis Tucker, Sean King, good to see you. Pinworm, Wilberforce, of course. Maria McIntyre, good morning. Lori Hayes, and Clive Gordon. And I wish I could pronounce your name. I know that's Icelandic. I'm not even going to try. Hayes I am is an idiot, a genuine confused idiot that sounds drunk even when sober. Yeah, I think there's probably something, either medication necessary or medication, overdoing it, some kind of side effect. Peter, have you considered consulting, I don't know, someone who's familiar with OBS? Wink, wink. No, I did think about that, but here's the problem. OBS for me still doesn't, I mean, still isn't much of an option. But having you produce one like this was just supposed to be a casual stream. I had used that other software before, and I thought, we can just do this one. I'll give it a try and see if I can get comfortable with it. No, that software kind of also needs 2 monitors at least. So not good. I mean, StreamYard would be better with 2 monitors too. The fact that I'm doing this on a 14-inch laptop is insane. So, but anyway, I'm an idiot. Anyway, Warren or Wilberforce, is there anything that you want to say in advance before we get into this thing?
The only 2 things I can think of, I have to give credit to Mark because he's way more patient with these guys than I would have been. So there's that. The other thing is, because this very obviously cannot be monetized, folks, extra super chats. Just because I talked Jefferson into suffering through this, so. Make it up to him.
Poor Hilda. That name is metal as hell. That is a cool first name. I won't try to pronounce the last name, but I know it ends in daughter. But even though I'm not pronouncing that correctly, so.
I would mess that up horribly.
Yeah. I don't pronounce French or Spanish well. I don't think I could. I don't think I could. I mean, I could probably suffer through with Icelandic. I'm sure the native Icelandic speakers would just be laughing at me. Okay, so we're starting this off about 6 minutes into it. Mark Reed has given like an introduction. The link to Mark's video is in the description. And so he's given an introduction about why he went in here and everything like that. I kind of skipped forward to that so we can just get into the immediate, because it goes dumpster fire in about -10 seconds, if that's possible. And I think there's the dumpster fire icon behind this, so I think Praise knew what was going to happen. He probably put that up as soon as Mark Reed wanted to come in, or as soon as he realized that Jason Ezard is like fighting sleep and pounding Fosters or something, whatever it is he does. So yeah, we're going to get into
it's Kentucky Deluxe.
He's on something or off something needed or something, but
yep.
For the most part, everything in here. So some trigger warnings for this. There's an enormous amount of ignorance in this thing, which is definitely going to trigger. Well, Wilberforce promises to be triggered. That's what he told me weeks ago. So that's not going to be surprising. But for anybody who's not comfortable hearing these issues mangled repeatedly and chronically and maliciously, because often they'll bring up points and you'll hear somebody snicker or giggle. This is not a group of like concerned citizens that reasonably want to exchange ideas. This is just a massive troll session. And Mark waded in there and decided that he was going to, try to like correct this. And, for some of these people, there's no. I know for a fact when it comes to Jill, there's no talking him out of some of this stuff. Jill is just a hateful moron. So
he can't be talked out of any of this. He's decided that he's right.
Yeah, exactly.
As I mentioned before, like I am certain that the only person I've ever heard speak who is as condescending as Jill was J. Robin.
And I would say, yeah, that's probably up there. I mean, I've heard Dart Dawkins has gotten close. He's gotten really, really smarmy and, really laid it out.
He has.
But he usually can't keep it up for as long. He doesn't have the patience. Then he will start getting into screaming, yelling, kicking, muting, that kind of stuff. Let's see. All right. And good to see you, by the way, Alex. All right, so here we go. We're going to start from here. Usual rules apply. Let me know if volume's not working. Just start yelling at us. Here we go. And, of course, Wilberforce, let me know when you're ready if you want to pipe in on something. So here we go. Of course. If you don't day drink, people, today's a good day to start. Let's go.
This is my first Saturday not doing that in I don't know how long.
Well, I should do this. Pinworm. I like the comment, Pinworm. Have a little money. I'll take it. Thank you.
I posed to you in the chat as a disrespectful question because it was not the goal.
No, it was just it was a legitimate question, and I hope I answered it well.
I didn't get to see your answer, unfortunately, because I was joining the chat.
I need to have a presence in the community.
Hang on. Just go, Ginger. Just ignore it. Just go and say.
Oh, I said no.
I'm gay and I'm proud.
I said
Yeah,
you shouldn't assume that because it goes against what the Bible says and what
Right.
Jesus
So,
taught.
And I love the
right.
Lord.
So then, can I ask how it would be fair to assume that everybody in the LGBTQ community hates Christ? If that's your answer to that question, because I don't have.
So the guy that keeps talking over Ginger there is not gay. I would also say he's not much of a Christian either, but I think his name is Dave, the news unit. And he's also just completely, well, he's wasted and he's a waste of time. I think my brother's had multiple conversations with him, and every time I usually hear about it like the day after or whatever. He's like, I was talking to this idiot named the news unit. And I'm like, who the hell is that? He's like, oh, he's this, oxygen thief that hangs out over at Praise's channel. And
as opposed to everyone else who hangs out.
As opposed to any of the oxygen donors over there. I mean, because talking with plants would be more productive. But but yeah, he also sounds like he's a little drunk. And who knows when this happened? Because this could have been like one of those like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning Eastern Standard Time kind of things for me, which for Praise would have been midnight or so, because I think he's Central Time. And well,
I mean, if Mark's popping in there, it's daytime in Australia typically.
Yeah, or like the month before. I don't know because they're in like some kind of time vortex down in Australia. But yeah, it's like sometimes I think I've got like their time zones figured out. I'm like, well, you're like 17 hours ahead. He's like, no, we're 15 hours behind now. Like, what the? Like, it's that floating island in Lost. It just moved.
It's 1872 today.
Yeah, it's like it's such a whimsical place. I mean, they don't nickname it Oz for without reason.
Right.
So.
I don't have any issues, and a lot of the people that have been in my life or a part of the community that actually gives a shit about people, none of them hate Christians. A lot of us don't agree with the fact that these people are spreading hatred and acting like, well, violence is going to solve anything, when in reality, we all know it won't.
That's right.
I also really don't appreciate the use of the word
You just
retard.
said you're a part of the community, a community that actually gives a shit about people. That's like saying we don't.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, to be fair, Jason gives a shit about communities that exactly agree with him, which is a really limited community of rural dwelling Tasmanian alcoholics who get enraged about everything. If you fit that characteristic, you and Jason are probably get along fine until you both hit critical drunkenness, and then you just set your minds on killing each other with knives.
I think they generally would not get along.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen where Jason lives. Like, he'll show photos of he lives out in the middle of nowhere. I'm pretty sure he lives in Tasmania. So he's a boat trip away from the mainland. Tasmania is pretty rural anyway. It's beautiful. But I think he lives out like in a hut in the middle of nowhere, and I think he kind of has to. So I'm not sure what this dude does for work. There was one day he was showing photos. I can't remember what it was on. He was showing photos of his garden. He does a bunch of organic gardening, his tomatoes and stuff like that. Now does the organic gardening because I think the conventional produce are loaded up with the microchips that are going to steal his precious thoughts. What he doesn't understand is that conspiracy theory only works if the chips are smart enough to realize there's nothing in Jason's mind worthy of stealing. So his conspiracy theory is totally broken. But I was commenting on it, and I was like, "Oh, that's a nice garden. I like vegetable gardening too, and I could really." I'm like, "Oh, that's very cool." He's got his own compost set up and everything. And I'm commenting. He was immediately hostile and defensive about my comments. And I'm like, "I'm being sincere. That's a good garden. I can appreciate it as someone who has barely attempted a garden. I think I killed a tomato in a pot. I tried to grow it and it just destroyed it. And I'm like, that is a really impressive garden. He's like, what do you do about it, space? I'm like, holy crap, geez, I just wanted to compliment the garden photos that you showed. Holy shit.
Yeah, but then he wouldn't be spewing hate and vitriol, and that's just you know, out of his lane.
Well, apparently, as a non-Christian, I don't have a frame of reference to ground my compliments about his garden. So it was
how do you even know it's a garden?
Define tomato, speech cook. Yeah. All right.
Well, right, but
Well, you
to
don't
assume
give a
that
shit
all
about
of it.
some
Well, I'm
people,
not
do
saying.
you?
I'm not saying that you guys don't, but it was not really a fair assumption to say that because these people are doing stupid shit that all of us believe or agree with this kind of thing when we don't. I don't agree with the
don't
fact
care
that people
about-
are acting violent and saying that we should use guns to shoot Christians when I have plenty of friends that are Christians. Yeah,
So
well,
you actively oppose that, right?
a lot of us do. It's not just because somebody decides that they're going to make a YouTube video supporting the fact that, hey, we should shoot Christian people or shoot Christian kids, doesn't mean an entire community of over 1 million people are going to be like, oh yeah, let's all get behind that. It's just because a small portion of stupid people say stupid shit doesn't mean an entire community. That's like me saying that
You're a
because
part of a leftist
Christian
community that set whole cities on fire.
That's one of the hottest takes ever is that we shouldn't shoot people.
The thing I like best about praise here is pretending to be some kind of hot shot, like investigative journalist or something like,
right.
Oh, so you're gonna denounce their violence. Now, these clowns actually think that the Trans Day of Vengeance is supposed to be taken literally. Like it's not a title that is just loaded up with irony. It has nothing to do with this whole thing that they have it in their head like, oh, well, this individual who committed this shooting in Nashville, they're part of this broader plot of transgender fanatics who are going to wander the countryside shooting up Christian establishments. Like nothing about this has been established in any way. The only thing that we have from the shooter that identifies as trans is that they identified as she, identified as he on a LinkedIn profile and I think maybe Facebook or something. These guys have they've already jumped to the conclusion that this individual is transitioning. It's like we don't know that they I mean, if they were genuine in what they were doing with LinkedIn and Facebook, the social media stuff, then yes, they were beginning to socially transition. But the only thing that we know, but these guys just jumped to this conclusion that, oh, well, this is a person who's loaded up on steroids and has gone under the knife. Like, we don't know anything about the shooter. Nothing's been released since this damn shooting happened.
Honestly, the way that it was reported, it took me forever to figure out whether this was a trans man or a trans woman.
Yeah, it was so weak. It wasn't until they realized that individual had social media accounts where they identified as male. And they were like, okay, well, are we dealing with someone who is transgender or not? What's going on? And to the best of my knowledge, like the way people are like, well, if that's the way they were identifying, then that's the way we should identify them. I don't think it was consistent across the board. And the only thing we know about their treatment, they were seeing a psychologist for, quote unquote, an emotional disturbance or some emotional imbalance. Who knows what that means? So anything that anyone's doing at this point is just complete and total speculation. And they've already managed to, yep, they definitely are trans. Yep, they're definitely going through hormone replacement therapy. Yep, they probably were butchered by some doctor. Yep, they were also reacting to the Trans Day of Vengeance stuff online, took it literally, and used that as a call to arms and went in and attacked a bunch of Christians because they're God-hating trans people. Like, none of this stuff follows from the other. None of it.
And I think the biggest reason that these guys are looking at the Trans Day of Vengeance as like a literal thing is because when they think of vengeance, it's literal. You know, it's God's going to get you. Like, that's what it is. So.
Yeah. So here we go. So yeah. So now Jill is in the room to make things better.
Oh yeah, he'll fix everything.
Michael writes, the unifying factors in all shootings, in all U.S. shootings, is mental health unchecked, easy access to firearms, surrounded by a culture that glorifies violence as a solution, and usually white male and right leaning. Yeah, those are usually pretty safe markers for it. So
well, and that's, to be honest, like, you know, after this particular shooting, you know, like Ben Shapiro's going off about, oh well, you know, trans people just shouldn't be allowed to have guns, and I'm like, you know, if we're basing whether or not you can have guns on your specific demographic, I should not have guns.
Right.
You know, as a cis white male, like that's 99% of mass shooters.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like, well, if you're cishet male, probably ought to not do that. But yeah,
Right.
it amazes me. It's like, oh well, I think we've seen a pattern here. Like we've seen a pattern out of the thousands of mass shootings that we have. Less than a fraction of a percentage. I think that like out of the last like 15 years, 4 have identified as trans or non-binary.
Yeah.
4 shooters
out of thousands.
Out of thousands of perpetrators. It's like, no. And so now all of a sudden these guys are interested in demographics, statistics, risk profiles. It's like you hypocritical pieces of shit. No, you're fucking not. You're looking at a way of denigrating this so that you can stop looking at the real problem, which is an easy access to guns, regardless of people's health profiles, regardless of their circumstances. It's just become, despite the fact that everybody wants to conflate a right to self-defense with a Second Amendment right to bear arms, which is really Supreme Court used to hold as a state's right. Now it's an individual right to defend yourself with a gun. So now you have the right to own a gun, which is interesting because you have the right to own something, whether or not you can afford one or not doesn't seem to actually factor into their concept of what a right is. It's just ridiculous. It's just this kind of weird ass like Mad Max style libertarianism that just doesn't track with any of the other stuff. It's like, yeah, I have the right to vote, but I have to register for that. You know. Yeah. But at least I don't have to pay to vote. Not yet.
Anymore.
Yeah, thanks, poll taxes. So, okay.
Right, but that's like me saying because the Westboro Baptist Church.
Us now.
Hang on.
We need
that's like me saying that
more federal funding.
But my question is, like,
if we're going to judge people by the worst elements of their demographic, then Christians are in big trouble.
We need to start
right. So then, if that's the case, then should I now judge the Christian community because of the Westboro Baptist Church?
Well, evangelicals are in big trouble, are they?
Well, the Westboro Baptist Church is.
Well, nah.
The Westboro Baptist Church is not running for president. They're not sitting in the White House.
Okay.
How many trans people are running for president?
This is the dumbest take. I mean, even for Jill, this is a remarkably clueless take. Like, oh well, you don't understand because if you read the things that I've scrawled on my bathroom ceiling, you'd understand the deep connection between these. Like, Jill, what's going on?
And honestly, like I would point out to Jill, well, yeah, but Westboro Baptist Church type fundies are in Congress.
Yeah,
there's one from my state, Lauren Boebert.
Yeah,
you know, literally said the church should be making the laws and telling the government what to do.
Yeah, I remember one time years ago, Jill said no, he didn't believe that churches should be in control because I called him a theocrat. I said you're basically an authoritarian theocrat, and he didn't believe it. He's like, no, I think the government should just be its own thing over here. And I'm like, then you're a secularist. You believe that there's some division between church and state? No. And I'm like, okay, so when I say secularist, you think atheist, right? That's what it is. I'm like, no, that's not. But all right. So you've really been bumping all of the hard right wing, Christian nationalist cocaine lately. Awful. So yeah, he's going to continue this point about how this.
It's the Democrats and liberals.
Yeah, and that is all entailed in the imaginary conspiracy that they are foaming at the mouth about here that has not been demonstrated to be the case at all. All imaginary, all speculation, just pearl clutching, hysterical nonsense. So, but
it's fear.
And then Jill comes in and is like, yeah, and we're justified in that fear because Biden. Like,
right. Because we all know how much of a crazy lefty Joe Biden is.
Yeah, exactly. When I think of communists, the first thing that comes to my mind is Joe Biden.
Is the senator from NBNA.
Riding the train, yeah. Talking about Corn Pop being a bad dude. Yep,
Still a very
he's the second he's the second coming of Pol Pot if I ever saw one. Look at that guy.
I had forgotten about Corn Pop.
Corn Pop. They used to come at you with those rusty chains, remember? Like, no, we don't, Joe.
Oh yeah.
violent and racist part of your guys' community. So should I assume that because these people exist that all Christians feel this way?
Can I finish my point? So to compare the Westboro Baptist Church to what's being promoted now by the Democratic Party and the people you support is to compare apples with oranges.
Who do I support?
Baptist Church has no footing in the GOP.
This is a dodge. This is just a dodge. We're not talking about the Democratic Party. We're talking about the LGBTQI community.
I was talking to Q. So you can't compare the two. It's like apples and oranges. So when we say you support this evil, we're saying that you go out and you vote for these politicians who are pushing these legislations or these laws.
What legislation led to any of this? Any of the stuff?
Well, there's a lack of legislation that did.
Right. Like the only if Biden could be connected to moves that have been made through between the NRA and ALEC, that right-wing legislative group, they pretty much just basically they make a template of a law and then they shop it around to different state legislatures. One of them, I think, was to make it permanent. It was the most ridiculously worded thing. They would pass a law that made the passing of laws about this law impossible, effectively making the ability to legislate on this particular issue impossible in perpetuity. And it's like there is no grounding for any of that. And ALEC did that with like 2 or 3 different issues, and one of them involved guns. So it's like, look, if you
shocking.
It was this weird libertarian mindset, like, okay, the only good law that we can pass is a law making it illegal to pass a law about this thing that I want. Like, okay, like you can never. The law says you can never make a law about me owning guns. I don't ever want to talk about it again. It's written in stone. I have spoken. Like, no, that's not how. That's not how.
But that's not theocratic.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Laws.
But I do not do that.
Well, you may not vote. But most
a lot of us really don't give a shit about that kind of stuff.
Most atheists.
I'm pretty sure that not every single
evangelicals have the lowest antidepressant use.
Projecting wholesale political identity onto an entire community, and
Thank you.
Just really disingenuous.
I said most according
I
to.
I said most, not all. Yeah, that really doesn't make much of a difference, and it has nothing to do with the fact that it was a completely pointless comparison. Like most Democrats are in favor of legislating for the kinds of things we just saw: mass shootings in schools.
Right. And quickly, I just want to point out to Warren in the chat, no, this stream is not about arguments for God. Sorry, dude. You should have read the title.
Yeah, this is just Cindy fundagelical politics time. Yeah, basically it is. It's the early It's an early morning eye roll. I mean, that's what this one's about.
Right.
I don't care. People vote for.
I know you don't care about.
You're trying to make it a.
I know you don't care about statistics.
It doesn't matter who you vote for. What we're talking
it does
about
matter
is
who
the
you vote for.
morals of a community who are being threatened with death, who do not believe that all Christians should be killed. That is.
No, they're threatening us with death. No, you got it wrong. They're threatening us with death.
No one is threatening. Who is threatening us? Like. So, like,
right.
Like, first of all, Jason, like I said, is a fundamentalist Christian who lives in rural Tasmania. Like, what his particular demographic, I doubt, is being threatened with death. And on top of all this other stuff, like, I don't recall any groups actively threatening Christians anywhere, and least of all. I don't see any kind of like, now if you might have like one person, one activist out there that has seriously tried to make some claim about how they're going to get violent with the Westboro Baptists or something like this. Who knows? But as far as there being like, they, big quotes, are threatening us, also big quotes. It's like, that's not a thing. You just whipped this up from like right-wing media and ran with it because they were ginning up your fear too for clicks.
Well, I mean, if you don't have the us and they are attacking us, you can't have fascism, and they can't have that.
Yeah,
I mean,
I just love that, like the brazenness of that claim. Well, they're threatening us now. Like, where did you get that?
Who?
It gets worse for Jason when he starts talking about like his news sources.
Oh yeah, it gets a lot worse.
That is a small part of the community,
Jason.
But you're gonna go.
Yeah,
out
but when if the Christians did that, if a whole lot of Christians came out on social media and did that, then you guys would blame all the Christian community or most of it, and most of you would.
We would blame members of the Christian community if they did that, but that's the key thing. If they did that, there weren't a bunch of transgender people threatening to kill or harm anyone. And just because there was an event called the Trans Day of Vengeance, that was an ironic title, and it is I can't even remember where it comes from, but it's like 10 years old.
Well, I think what they're actually afraid of isn't violence, like being shot. I think they're really worried that vengeance is going to come in the form of trapping them.
Trapping them. Well, the weird thing is that in most of these cases, it's about holding them accountable for the crazy views that they spout. Because that seems to be the big thing that ever happened. Like, don't you threaten my viewpoint. Like, you came out and said that a group of people are targeting you, and you have no evidence for that. So yes, I am going to hold you to account to the bullshit statement you just made. Now you're persecuting me. If that's what you think persecution is, I can only. Do you know what a dictionary is or a thesaurus? Because I think you need to get introduced to both of those before you start making charges of what things are. Yeah, Jason's just a wreck.
And if you're gonna go ape shit about constantly, I'm being persecuted. All right, dude. Let me show you what persecution is.
Yeah. See here, it's a spin on Trans Day of Remembrance, isn't it? Yes, it is. It is connected with that, and I think it's sort of. I think there's like two different ones. Like the Trans Day of Remembrance was one, and somebody made a reference like the Trans Day of Vengeance. It was sort of an inside, kind of a tongue-in-cheek kind of thing, but it's never been associated with any actual. That it's not about that. It has nothing to do with actual threats of violence against anyone in particular or against any groups generally. That is not the point. So you have to completely miss the point of it. Look at it just literally. It says vengeance right there, as if vengeance always means, in every connotation means violent uprising and harm inflicted on others. And then run with the fact that this shooter is definitely connected to this crazy, to this, literal hysterical overreaction to an event, and then try to spin this up as some kind of like, oh, well, they were radicalized online. Like, we still do not know anything nearly enough about that particular shooter to be able to say that.
And we never will.
Yeah, I kind of wonder.
It will all be overshouted by, they did this because they were trans. Like, no.
Yeah. Well, and my guess is by the time the FBI and other law enforcement agencies are capable of releasing any of this information to the public, the media will be focused on the next massacre,
right?
The most recent massacre. So everybody will be like, "Oh yeah, that one in Nashville. I remember that one." I mean, I barely remember. There are times when I'm, when I'm in certain parts of Michigan, the mass shooting that happened in East Lansing.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see these signs in other places in Michigan. And I'll drive past a storefront and it says Spartan Strong in the window. And I'm like, Spartan? I'm like, what the hell is that? Oh, right, the mass shooting. I forgot that was like 9 ago. So.
Oh, dude, I live in Colorado. We have the patent on mass shootings. It's disproportionate.
Yeah, I actually found myself laughing in my car, not knowing what it meant, and then realizing like that's fucking stupid. We have so many mass shootings. I forgot about the one that happened like, what was that, 2 months ago, 3 months ago?
Yeah,
and it was back when local for me, like
right back when I was teaching, We had a lockdown because there was an active shooter. Never got into the building, which is good. But literally, while that was going on, I got a text message from my kids' school saying they were on lockdown because of an active shooter. And it was like, God damn it. What the fuck? And they interviewed people who were involved in, I don't even know if it was this particular one, but they literally interviewed people from one of these recent ones who had been in like other mass shootings. Like if there's people out there who've experienced multiple events like this, it's happening too much.
Yeah, and probably the best thing to do about that might be to like maybe restrict gun ownership. Just as
oh no, you can't do that.
Right, which is it's interesting that it's barely even the idea of just like, oh, well, we want to pass an assault rifle ban, an assault weapons ban, and it's like I don't for certain weapons I could say, okay, maybe that's an assault rifle if you're talking about a velocity,
Right.
You have to be talking about like grain and load and that kind of thing. But that being said, it's like, well, these kinds of weapons do this kind of damage. Like, agreed. Yeah, if you fire a 223 out of a high, depending on the weapon, depending on the round, there's a lot more complicated than that. Like a 223 load or something like that, or a 22 round, like you can do serious damage with a carbine, and it looks practically, old fashioned compared to the other stuff. Most people buy 15s because they look menacing. It looks like I look like a soldier, and I'm going to take care of business. And it's like it's not that high speed a weapon, especially if you're a shit shot. However, given the fact that they're usually low recoil, and they have a decent amount of firepower in terms of rounds that they carry. If you get the right one, I think one of the ones that was used at Uvalde was like I can't remember what they called it. But it's a little bit beefier than just kind of your standard 223. So this idea that like even that kind of thing, where it's just like, and I always think those are really weak. We're going to ban assault. A lot of that's cosmetic. I mean,
I'd say most of it.
Yeah, unless it's being done. Some of it's cosmetic for a tactical purpose. But a lot of the stuff that's available to consumers, it is just cosmetic. And then on top of that, it doesn't really get into the fact that like what kind of weapon or what kind of round are you firing? That makes the difference. Like speed per second. That is more important than the appearance of the gun. And I mean, because we haven't seen a mass shooting with somebody rolling up in there with like a Benelli tactical shotgun.
Right, or a bolt action .6 or something like that.
Yeah, and it's like, and the reason they're not is because those require. I mean, they don't look tactical, and a lot of the ding dongs that end up engaging in these shootings seem to want to go out on the news looking like they're kind of SWAT like. Like, oh, they look, it's like, oh, I look high speed and militarized. Yeah, okay. But you're not. You're just a lunatic that has, picked a soft target and started shooting innocent people. And you did it with a gun that your superficial brain thought made you look like a badass.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, there's the fact that there's enough of that out there. I mean, there's a lot of psychological baggage associated with these mass shooters just from that analysis. But the fact that even when politicians come out and want to do like, hey, we'll just ban assault rifles, like, okay, go. As far as I'm concerned, like, yeah,
even
go
red
ahead.
flag laws.
Those to me would be better. That's much better than the idea of like, well, there's some guns that are more dangerous than others, which is like that's a fine argument, agreed. But the idea that like we're going to ban assault style weapons, it's like, don't ban assault style weapons. You ought to ban assault style rounds, assault style. There needs to be a limitation on the kind of ammo that you're putting down range. That's the key difference. And without politicians that don't make that distinction, they're just going after a gun that looks bad. It's like, okay, I get it, because usually the weirdos that want to go after it, they want to go after the gun that looks violent and sexy, or whatever. So maybe
because they think they're commando. The Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, and they're just going to run around with an unlimited magazine, apparently.
Yeah.
You know,
Would say not all of you,
I
most
doubt
of you.
that most of us would. I think those people that are responding with violence
Mate,
are
I
going to
was friends
respond
with
to it.
hundreds of gay people, mate, up in Oxford Street and up in Sydney and that. I've been to gay nightclubs and gone out to parties, and don't tell me, mate, to please.
And if
So they all
Donald
want to
Trump
kill
and
you,
the
do they,
Republican
Jason?
Party was
So
supporting
why are you
this.
giving us?
But not all want to kill you. Not all want to kill you, but they hate God, mate. They hate God, and they do.
Yeah. All of them?
Wouldn't you have to think God is real first?
Yeah, that's the problem.
If you've hung out with these people, then why are you being such an absolute asshole to them?
I'm not being an asshole. Why am I being an asshole?
you
I'm
are.
just saying
Yeah,
most
you
of them hate
are.
God, and they do. They're atheists, God-hating atheists. I used to hang around them, mate. You would mention Christianity, almost every single one of them.
It sounds like they hate Christianity.
Yeah,
not necessarily.
I'm okay with that.
not necessarily God, Jason. Just saying.
Except for maybe.
I'm sorry. Were you going to say something?
Oh no, I was just agreeing with you.
Okay.
1 in 100.
Yeah, I don't have to respect your God. That's your belief. You can go away and do that all you want. But
No, I'm not asking you to respect that, but
you saying that they do not
hatred
have
spat on, hatred heaped on. I've been there, I've seen it, mate. So you're not even going to let me explain. You tell me I'm absolute bullshit, but you don't even know the situation. What situations I'm talking about?
Yeah, we don't know the situations that you're talking about because I'm pretty sure this didn't happen. And even if it did,
absolutely didn't happen.
Even if it did, Jason, let's so Jason, who can't calm down in a conversation where he's anonymous over the internet, is hanging out in nightclubs and stuff with his friends, and there happen to be trans people there, and they get into a conversation about Christianity, and these people start doing the pew pew pew. Okay. Do you think maybe they're just doing that to wind you up?
Or maybe they're at a dance club and they don't really want to have a theological conversation.
That too. Yeah, this no, they said that, therefore they're guilty of being a part of this violent cabal that wants to end Christians. Like, look, the violent cabal that's out there is a group of people that are violently angry at the constant annoyance that fundamentalist Christians present to the rest of the world. It's like, we want to do this, and some Christian shows up and like, well, no, you can't do that because it's just flipping out about nothing. Yeah. This really doesn't have any bearing, I think, especially for Jason.
You're a wombat is what you are.
Yeah, you guys are
Oh yeah, and evangelicals have the lowest antidepressant use, and atheists have the highest antidepressant use.
Got to point this out. Evangelicals have the lowest antidepressant use, not because they're less in need, but because half of them think that it's not a mental illness, it's demon possession.
It also depends. This was an issue that came up with a friend of mine and his wife, church that they had been attending for years, and they both started to have issues with it. He was kind of struggling with issues of the faith. She was actually struggling with some of the social issues at the church. She was involved with like the other mothers that were there and things like that. She's got several kids, and this particular church was involved with, I don't know if they all homeschool, but there was a decent cohort of parents that homeschooled some of their kids. And I think she dealt with issues like, struggles with, getting them education and things like that. Just the frustration and depression and stuff that sets in on them. And she would just get these she's just like, I couldn't figure out what was going on. And she's like, there's just the women's groups, like you go to them and you start asking for advice. It's just BS. It's just a lot of superficial BS. And then she started finding out how many of them were actually medicated.
Right.
And drinking.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was like, okay, so it's okay, and in their particular congregation, I don't think they had any issues with alcohol, but they had a huge stigma about psychological care and especially about antidepressants. So lots of these people were on antidepressants, but because of that particular denomination, and they were in the evangelical camp, they just never admitted to doing that.
Pretty much, yeah.
Their doctor prescribed them, quote unquote, medicine. They didn't have to tell anybody what it was, and so they just wouldn't admit it. And then she started finding out how many of them actually were like self-medicating, one, which they probably weren't supposed to do, if they were going to be good Christian moms. And then the other one was the fact that they were taking drugs, which they probably should have been. You know, if they're depressed, they should be pursuing that. But they were lying to themselves and to each other about whether or not they needed them. And if anybody ever asked them officially, then, so if they were ever polled, like none of those people would be like, this is a remarkably, you know, unmedicated group of people here. It's like, yeah, they're all lying. A lot of them are lying.
I mean, they can't acknowledge having any kind of mental illness because that's some kind of, I think if they do, a lot of people will start to think, well, maybe my mental illness is why I am so dedicated to this cult, right?
Yeah, and I think that was the thing that she found too, is that I think if I remember the story right, the basic idea was she would go to them and be like, look, you know, I'm trying to take your advice. I'm praying, I'm doing these meditations, I'm reading the books that you guys are suggesting to me, and you know what, still, you know, check off the box, frustrated, anxious, depressed, whatever. And then I come to find out, like they're like telling each other, or they're telling other people, like, oh, well, you just need to pray more, this is an issue of faith, the Holy Spirit can guide you, blah 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 blah. Is that where they stopped? Absolutely not, because it didn't work for them either. They went to their doctor, they got some Lexapro, and then ran to a grocery store, you know, ran to the Kroger and picked up a box of wine, you know, whatever it takes for the evening. It's like,
I keep having to point out to you, Jefferson, it's Kentucky Deluxe.
Kentucky, you know, that might be one of the few things I do not know. I don't think I've ever even seen that, and I've spent time in Kentucky.
It's cheaper than Skull.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah, it's bad. I drank it in high school. But it's literally, if you look at the description, it's 20% Kentucky bourbon, 80% distilled neutral spirits, whatever that means.
What's this stuff called?
Kentucky Deluxe.
Kentucky Deluxe. It sounds like that stuff that Math Pig drinks. What's it called? It's like caffeinated wine.
And like Four Loko or something?
Yeah, but before Four Loko, and like you can get it out in the countryside or whatever in Ireland. I can't remember what it's called, but it's like Bohm Fast, something like that. I can't remember because it reminds me of breakfast, but with an explosion. And I
think I know what you're talking about.
It's this, yeah.
And like I think it's Bum Fast.
Something like that, yeah. And I think it's only red. I don't know if it comes in white. But it's got like 20%. It's like this enormous amount of caffeine in it, and I'm like, why? And I realized, I'm like, oh well, this is the place. I mean, this is a place where for a long time, I don't know if it is for younger people now, but for a certain generation of people, it was very common to like instant coffee and then a healthy serving of whiskey in it, you know, to get you started. Yeah. So yeah,
I mean, it's in Ireland, so you know.
Yeah, when he was telling me, I'm like, why would you caffeinate wine? What crazy bastard thought that was good? Hand it to him. Kroger is a Midwest doxing. It is. Yeah, I've revealed. Well, you know, they merge with Albertsons now, so they're. I think they are now the biggest physical U.S. retailer.
Yeah. I mean, out here they're King Soopers, but yeah.
Are they the same owner? Is it Kroger Albertsons?
Yeah, it's all owned by Kroger.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, well, enough of that tangent. Let's get back into this crazy thing. Jason's really going to start yelling. I might have to turn down the volume.
Still a crap, mate.
Evangelicals have the highest representation of non-reporting of.
Let's see here, Warren. I hate to do this, but you're spouting off some crap that's going to be in my my stuff for a while, so I'm just going to block you. You were blocked because I don't want those comments popping back up. So sorry about that, but continue to watch. I'll unblock you once this is done. But yeah, the mutilation comments, those aren't staying on my feed. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, no, wait, no, I'm not sorry. Get educated or go fuck yourself.
Mental health issues, and the largest.
Oh, what a load of rubbish! What a load of rubbish! I've lived both lifestyles, buddy.
No, because I can show you reports that say that they do not blame mental health. Instead, they blame spiritual problems. So they
of course, mate.
Which was the point that you made, Wilberforce. So
yeah.
KJV, why bother with those channels? I was asked to bother with this particular room by Wilberforce. Blame Wilberforce.
Totally my fault.
He blames himself. I don't feel like I'm throwing him under the bus.
No.
There'll be thousands of reports out there. You can cherry pick, but okay, all right. I'll tell you what. Let's get together all the reports on evangelicals and on atheists and see. All right.
Changes the subject constantly. Every single one of them having a mental disorder, like shamefully, and then you have the gall to say I'm not attacking them, which is disgusting. Quite.
Yeah, this is interesting. So right here, I skipped past a little bit. Mark had called out a comment that I don't think we got to hear. I think it was, I think he had said it earlier in this conversation. Maybe even before Mark came into the room. The praise had said something about trans people and mental disorders. He basically made this blanket claim that they suffer
the whole gender dysphoria thing.
Yeah, and he's trying to like label it with that, which praise clearly doesn't understand what that means. And to be fair, I didn't fully understand it until 3-4 weeks ago, and I don't consider myself, I'm just not that. I'm a cishet middle-aged white guy, so I pick this stuff up slowly because it's not. Well, it is kind of directly impacting me. I have friends that have been through some of this stuff, but the terminology and stuff has changed. So,
yeah, it's one of those things. Like it matters to me because like I have a gay kid, and my niece is non-binary. Although I don't even know if that means I can call her my niece or not. I'm not sure. Language evolves.
Yeah.
It is
Australia? Now, wait a minute. Do you know Australia is a country of only 26 million people, and there's hundreds and hundreds of trans waiting to transition back to their original sex, and a lot of them are committing suicide. Do you want to see the article? And if YouTube want to fact check me, look up Sky News Australia. Hundreds of trans waiting to return to original.
I like how Mark immediately reacts. Oh, Sky News. Sky News, for anybody who's not aware, I think most of my audience probably is. Sky News is owned by, I think it's owned by the same company as Fox. It sort of is like the Fox News of England.
I think it's more like the OAN.
Yeah, I mean, in Europe, it probably would. In Europe and the UK and Australia, probably go over with about the same splash as OWN. Because I think in some cases, Sky will put out articles that aren't quite as like right wing as right wing things get in the US. But yeah, for anybody over in Australia, yeah, they're probably just right next to Khmer Rouge or. Let's see. But the fact that it doesn't take him very long to look this up. I think there's going to be some screaming, so I might push ahead until about. Oh, actually, we're getting pretty close to one of Jill's dumb questions.
Sex, mate. Just read the story. Go read the story. Look at the references. Okay, here we go. There's hundreds. They've got the evidence. See, they must be lying when they've got the evidence. You're an idiot, Mark.
Jason,
give me the citation, Jason. Give me the citation.
Mark, is gender dysphoria, is that a mental disorder?
But they're closing down these stations all over the world, mate, and there's thousands of these people are suing, mate, and they're closing them down. Yes, go and have a look. You're just living in a little bubble, mate, where you don't see any of it.
Can I ask Mark a question, Jason? Is gender dysphoria a mental disorder? Yes or no?
No.
So this question from Jill. What really pisses me off about it, okay, let's just assume, I'll grant him, right, that gender dysphoria is a mental disorder and everyone who's trans has it, right, which isn't the case. But even granting that, okay, and like I'm bipolar, I have medication for it, like medical treatment to address it. So if somebody is, assuming all trans people have gender dysphoria, okay, well then treat it. And how do you treat it? HRT and, gender affirming care. Like, why doesn't he get this?
Yeah, and I think he just wants to do this so that he can denigrate,
Oh, absolutely.
The idea that you would say, like, 'cause, I mean, it used to be labeled gender identity disorder, and then they realized disorder wasn't really accurate, and they changed it to dysphoria. So if he understood the psychology of it, or the line of thinking behind this, the idea is that, well, is gender dysphoria a disorder? No, it's a dysphoria. That's why they went with that. And not everyone who's trans is dysphoric. So this is kind of a pointless question. He just wants to get to the point where it's like, oh, okay, well, if they've got this, then it's a disorder. So you can't attack praise for saying these people suffer from a mental disorder. Yeah, Mark still can do that, because let's say that let's just concede something weird halfway. Everyone who's trans is dysphoric. That still doesn't mean they're suffering from a disorder.
Right. So it just means that their sex and their gender don't match.
And they feel some kind of anxiety towards it. There's an incongruence that causes some level of discomfort and anxiety.
Right. And most of that discomfort and anxiety isn't even caused by that, but how they're treated.
Yeah.
Like my dad, who nobody could reasonably call an ally, right? Even he looked at, this Nashville thing and said, well, yeah, what do you expect? I guarantee this person was relentlessly and horrifically bullied and mistreated and all this stuff, and probably snapped.
Possibly, but again, speculating in that direction is just as much as speculative as going the other way. Like, there's actually, I think Jason says something here coming up, or Jill does, and I think it's funny the way they kind of try to sum everything up, but it's horrible.
It can be, yes. It depends on.
Okay, so when Prey says that they have a mental disorder, he's correct then.
Not everybody that's trans has dysphoria. That is true.
Right. Not everybody who's trans has a mental disorder, right? That's the problem.
Right. So this is the problem with you people. Not
I can
you
identify
guys aren't psychologists. No, Jill, shut up.
What do you mean, you people?
No, shut the fuck up. I got to respond.
Oh, fuck you.
You guys,
you people.
I think that's the first time I've ever heard Mark tell someone to shut the fuck up.
Yeah. I mean, he went into this one, ready to fight, and you can tell he's not happy with these guys, which I don't blame him. I'm wondering when Mark, because Mark's been doing this for a little while now, and he's good at this stuff. But eventually, and I have been in plenty of these kinds of rooms years ago. I've been in plenty of them, yelling at Jill, hollering at Veckel and Von Helton, which, holy shit, Von Helton is one of the dumbest motherfuckers. Oh my god, that guy.
I don't think I'm familiar with him.
Yeah, careful with that one. He's he's Kentucky. He's from the hills. In fact, I think does he live in Harlan County? He's somewhere out there in the boonies, but just crazy. And it's weird because Veckel would have him on a show all the time, and Von Helton was an avowed pagan. But because he was this like kind of paleo conservative on top of being a pagan, and kind of he looks like a toothless rum runner from like the 20s or something. Like he just, he looks mountain and he sounds mountain, which those aren't actual, those aren't disqualifiers for me. It's like, okay, well, if you're a cool dude, the mountain thing can kind of work. But he thinks that he claims he gets regular phone calls from Bibi Netanyahu, still calls him Bibi. And Putin talks with them on the phone. Like he makes up stories. He makes up more stories than Steven Seagal does. Like he's been everywhere. He's done everything. He's even done some things that don't exist. Like he was a space marine. And I'm not exaggerating. He said he was a space marine. Yeah, he's absolutely just batshit crazy. And he was just in these groups a lot. And I think he kind of emerged around the same time, once upon a time, with G-Man. And for whatever reason, he's always kind of on the side of the Christians because he's a believer. And so they kind of like use him as a useful idiot. But then like if they ever get into conversations with him one-on-one, like it gets crazy. But anyway, I've been where Mark's at, where it's like, okay, I'm going in here. Someone's wrong on the internet. I'm going to yell at him. it does no good. But
it doesn't.
But Mark,
but it's fun.
But this is the reason why I sit back from a distance and just like, condescendingly snark at them from my safe perch. Like, look at that stupid thing right there.
Your ivory tower.
Yeah, my self-made ivory tower. It's really just white concrete, but it's the best I could afford. Okay.
Will, what I mean is you bigoted evil people who want to cast everybody
not a fucking Christian.
Bigoted and evil. We're just stating facts. I'm literally stating facts and I'm being called bigoted and evil for stating facts.
Did you hear what this fucking baldy-headed
wish I could have my breast back?
Mate, it was in the mainstream media to a 4-year-old kid in Australia.
There it is.
Across my chest.
So
nobody's transitioning 4-year-olds. It's not a thing.
Well, no, it is. The problem is what they think. Like when you hear these guys, like I wanted to play this next part here.
You support the mutilation of children, Mark?
The mutilation of children. So there's bullshit line number one. Like if a giant alarm bell does not go off in your head when you hear somebody say something like that, it should.
Well, what does Jill have to say about circumcision?
A good question. I think he's been asked that before, and he just makes that noise and then dodges. Yeah,
sounds about right.
Yeah,
I could get some like a conversation
Mark,
in without.
You support the mutilation
of
children?
I said no, but children should not be getting any kind of surgery. So I don't know what you're talking about. So they shouldn't be circumcised.
They have to be 21.
They shouldn't have any kind of genital mutilation. They shouldn't have any kind of surgery that should be happening. However, we do give kids drugs, and that happens occasionally. Yeah,
they did it to a 4-year-old kid in Australia.
That is not mutilation.
4-year-old child. They transitioned a 4-year-old child.
So they didn't. The too long didn't read on that. Now Mark is going to go like while this is going on, he goes in and he digs this up, and it turns out it's not transitioning. These guys hear the word transition and they automatically assume they're being injected with chemicals and hormones, and then they're being put under the knife. Right. That's not transitioning. Transitioning starts off with in lots of different ways. It can start off with gender pronoun changes, a name change, legal documentation changes. These kinds of. These are all part of transitioning.
Just like the clothes you buy for the kid.
Yeah, all that stuff is on the table, and that's usually what happens with a lot of these stories. Is that the right-wing outlets that usually want to gin up this outrage? Because I really suspect that people like. Even like Tucker Carlson and stuff like this, although he's an ignoramus, but people at Fox News, either they might actually feel the opposite. They have trans friends and stuff like this, but they work for a nightmare corporation. And so they know that their business is outraged. And so they're going to put a story out there. And when they use transition, they know that the pearl clutchers that are tuning into Fox to get their daily dose of dopamine and outrage are going to hear transition and make assumptions, ignorant assumptions about what that means. No one on Fox News is going, unless it's a panelist they bring on that tries to get this point across, is going to set the record straight for them and say, no, transitioning does not mean gender affirming surgeries or hormone replacement theory. And the viewers need to be told this, like, you need to stop jumping to this conclusion. Jason Ezard needs to stop jumping to this conclusion, but he can't do that. So he's like, well, they transitioned a 4-year-old kid in Australia. That's true. Now, then you just have to ask somebody like Jason, can you define what transitioning means? Because I'm pretty sure they put the hormones in him, put him under the knife, and they started chopping into him. Like, no, you crazy lunatic. That's not what transitioning means. Like, that is a part of transitioning, but that is reserved for much later and only for people who feel that's part of their gender affirming care. Not everyone is going to. That's not going to be part of everyone's transition. So yeah, this stuff is it's so frustrating because he does this multiple times in this conversation.
At Royal North Shore Hospital.
Surgical transition, is that right?
Yes, at Royal North Shore Hospital.
So he's Mark even asked him, surgical transition, right? And Jason said yes, and names the hospital. All right.
Because Jason doesn't know.
Yeah, he does.
Did you protest against that, Mark?
It was in the news.
It was Jill is already asking. Well, Mark is clearly looking it up and just like, well, did you protest against it? It sounds like you should have. Like, yes, I was outraged immediately upon hearing it. I take all claims as true, and I start protesting. Wait a minute, I thought you guys were against virtue signaling. What the fuck? Facts don't care about my feelings. All that good shit. Why should I just jump to outrage already?
They only care about certain virtue signaling.
Yeah, right, exactly.
It's like only certain people are snowflakes.
Yeah,
you know, but then say happy holidays to them instead of Merry Christmas, and they flip their fucking lid.
Yeah, repost it. It was in the news. Classic. Yeah, and Jason says this quite often. Like, well, it was in the news. Like, yeah, clearly it must be true.
It was in the news.
Find out if it happened first.
Hey, it was in the mainstream media. This one it was in the MSN, mate.
Agreed. It was in the mainstream media, and they did say a 4-year-old was transitioning. But I don't think transitioning means what you think it means, Jason.
Right. So you remember a quote from The Princess Bride.
Yeah, it's a famous one. You keep using that word. Yeah, they keep using transitioning, and it's like, I have an idea that what's going on in your head when you hear that word or say that word is much different than what's happening in mine.
Yep.
On 7 or 9 or whatever it was.
So Mark Q, you can answer if you'd like. How old do you think you should be, or you have to be, before you are allowed to do something like this to yourself, even?
Hang on, let me.
Weirdly vague, but okay. Like
something like what?
Like transition, like change my name and start using different pronouns, or head to the doctor and get consultation for hormone replacement therapy and gender affirming surgery. Like,
does that mean that traditional Scottish apparel is transitioning somehow?
No, because it was made from men and men only.
Right.
Let me look this up.
18, 21.
Tucker Carlson did a story. Now wait a minute. Tucker Carlson did a story, and he did a whole documentary on it, and he's got all the links and references and heaps of people talking. They're literally closing down the transition.
I love it when well, that definitely cinches it then, right? Heaps of people. Okay, so heaps of people on a documentary that you line up, and either you get people that are like, I know which one he's talking about. I can't remember what the name of the Tucker Carlson quote unquote news special was. It was like detransitioned or something like that. And the people started debunking it from the trailer. They were debunking claims made in the trailer. So it's like no one takes it seriously. And I have to remind everyone who's listening to my channel and anybody who would take Jason Ezard seriously, or even if they don't take him seriously, they're just laughing at the fact that he takes Tucker Carlson seriously. But if Jason hears this and he's listening, remember, Fox News in a legal battle had to define Tucker Carlson's stuff and most of their other programming as entertainment in order to avoid liability.
Right. Well, I mean, they're in a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit right now over that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, the fact that they got so wrapped up in this shit that it got them in trouble with Dominion. Now, I think the only way they're going to be able to argue their way around this, like, oh, well, we're only providing entertainment. But the problem is that the entertainment they're providing is still libelous. So they're really, really good and proper fucked. That and the fact that they were hiding evidence that showed that, people were less convinced of these claims when talking amongst themselves than they were when they had to go on air. When they were on air, it was like, oh, heaps of people are saying this. It's out there. Just do your research, follow the evidence, Google it, mate. Like, oh, okay. But then behind the scenes, it's like, yeah, there's an expert that's looking into it. I'm not exactly sure how they go about proving that, but well, you know how it is with these Bidens.
Oh yes, the Bidens.
Under Biden he was personally disappearing all the scientists that knew about this stuff and could make my case for me.
In clinics all over the world, and they've got literally thousands upon thousands of people suing them at the moment, and that's why they're closing down. And they estimate and they anticipate even more lawsuits in the future.
My professional medical opinion is
nobody in this room has a professional medical opinion.
Well, yeah, and yeah, Will knows that, but he just loves starting off as sleazy as possible.
Oh yeah.
Didn't MSNBC do the same? Rachel Maddow is considered entertainment. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they're all considered commentary, which you have to like immediately put an asterisk on.
Right. I don't think any rational person is entertained by Rachel Maddow.
Yeah, her show's not great. I do like some of the the podcasts and stuff that she's done when she's done like a deeper dive into some of the investigative stuff.
Mhm.
It's been like the historical stuff has been pretty good.
Yeah.
But even her show, even whether you like it or not, and usually any of those shows, it's like 15 minutes of commentary, and then you get into ad breaks and interviews, which usually get quite dull. But they're all kind of like there's almost like there's tiers of it. There's the actual reporting, which a lot of that stuff they end up gleaning from Reuters and AP News, the two biggest news feeds. And most journalistic output, it doesn't matter if you're Fox News or if you're Wichita Times or whatever, everybody's getting it from the news wire. And it's usually AP News and or Reuters. And once you tone down to that, then you end up getting commentary, which is first you've got you've got the wire feed, then you've got the presentation of the news, then you get commentary, and then you get the entertainment part, which is usually commentary turned into like a blood sport. And that's like the Tucker Carlson's. Rachel Maddow is basically commentary, and depending on her frame of mind or her mood over a topic, maybe getting into the blood sport stuff. But the idea that it's like, okay, legally, if your content from like 80% of your content, which is not going to be the news feed, that's going to be about 20%. It provides the core of the stories there. If you're going to do any deep dive investigative stuff, that's going to be like ProPublica or something. That's journalism. It's not going to be.
Nobody considers your stream journalism.
No, right.
It's commentary and entertainment.
Yeah, it's just commentary. And if somebody's listening to my opinion on a topic, and that's all of that stuff needs a great big asterisk next to it, left or right leaning. And the fact that Jason is on here being like, hey, Tucker Carlson did a documentary on it. I'm like, oh, a documentary. So the documentary must be true.
I have to point out Midnight Jack's comment here. Tucker Carlson also made a segment on a guy tanning his balls as a therapeutic treatment.
I saw the ads for that. When I saw the ads for that thing, I was like, what in the hell are they doing? Like, it's like kind of a weird, like, where are the real men? And it just shows this like kind of jacked athletic dude. Looks like a fucking triathlete. Walks up there naked, stands in front, like holds his arms out. Like, what are we watching? I gotta admit, I found it strangely compelling. And then Tucker Carlson started speaking, and the juxtaposition from this like buff dude sunning his testicles to Tucker Carlson's doughy white Anglo-Saxon Protestant face, like I can't do it. I can't take that shift. You killed my boner, dude. You killed it.
I mean, some people it might help their boner. I don't know.
Who knows? Yeah. Yeah, Rachel is capable of good journalism. 10 years back, she reported on abortion. That was particularly well done. Yeah, I mean, they've all had their. Well, Tucker hasn't had his strengths. Tucker has not been good for the 15 years that 20 years he's been in quote unquote journalism. He has not been good. He was even considered not good when he was kind of studying this stuff in college. Like, this is not a strength for him. But yeah, like there are left-wing centrist, right-wing ones that are good at this kind of stuff, that do good journalism work. But when it gets into the commentary thing gets dangerous too, because I'll get in trouble for this kind of stuff. Like, to the extent that my stuff matters, somebody will be like, wait, why didn't you cover that? Why didn't you do? I'm like, it's just commentary. It's automatically limited. I could be wrong about 60% of what I'm talking about. I hope I'm not. But again, it's commentary and opinion. In a lot of cases, I try to limit it to, one, my impression of what I see going on, and two, my analysis of the way things are being presented by these other people, even the people that I agree with. Like my biggest criticism here for Mark and Ginger, the only criticisms that I have at this point in this presentation is that Q, Ginger Nation, doesn't really seem to know the situation well enough, I think, to be able to defend what these guys are trying to claim as some kind of transgender revolution against the Christian patriarchy or whatever. Because I think that's where their imaginations are going.
It's to give them credit. It's hard to do when there's all these multiple rabbit trails and gish gallops and all this stuff, like, how do you even track, because they're just all over the place.
Yeah. And I mean, so the fact that he's not aware of that or doesn't know about it, it's like fine. But I mean, he's making a good point in the sense that he's trying to say, like, look, even if that is the case, not everybody agrees with that. So he can't really give, and that's not really his fault at the point of where he's at in the show. If he's not aware of it, then he's just giving a defense saying, hey, it's not safe. And he's right. It's not safe to just generalize the entire group of people because you happen to think, or you happen to have seen examples of some of these members advocating for something terrible. That's just not, that's not a smart move. And he's right.
So yeah, these guys remind me of actually a coworker of mine who's super Pentecostal. Like, he's constantly telling me, you need Jesus and all this stuff. And it's funny because we share an office, but he is convinced that completely intersex people don't exist. It's not a thing, right? And anybody who says that they are is just lying. And I said, well, Amy Newman Amy Newman's intersex, right? He says, nah, not true. I've never seen it. And all I can think is, well, yeah, given your attitude, these people aren't going to be inclined to take their pants off for you. Like, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it's up to them if they even want to really, let you know.
Right.
So the idea that it's like, oh, that's just not a thing. It's like, it is. It's
right.
not. It really isn't common, but it's a thing. All right.
No!
Fuck you! Kill yourself! Fuck you! I'm gonna talk there.
Mate, I just gave you the reference.
And I'm just going to go through it. So, yeah, Mark essentially has found the part where it says that the kid was not in any way given any medication or any kind of surgical intervention. They're just transitioning the child socially. And so he's like yelling no. And now it's just going to be him and Jason and Will, but mostly Jason and Will yelling over Mark. So I'm just going to speed through here. Let's see. Oh, I think it's still, yeah. Okay. He's got his head in his hand. Here we go.
Out of their minds. No real, sort of representative of the trans community is supporting surgery for people that young. That is just a lie spread.
Well, mate, there's an 8-year-old child. There's an 8-year-old child. The mother's giving him hormone therapy at 8, right, to transition him. When he's with the father, he told the father he doesn't want to transition. The court forced the father to give him back to the mother, in effect, forcing the kid to, now you can look this case up. That was in Texas. And that's been ongoing, mate.
Yeah, again, no. That case I knew very well. Go ahead.
Something that actually did happen is Florida legalized parental kidnapping in cases similar to what Jason was just talking about.
Jeez.
Like, you can kidnap if your kid's trans and your one parent or even their family is supportive of it, you can literally kidnap them, go to Florida, and they will not extradite you when you're charged with parental kidnapping.
Good Lord.
It's insane.
How long has that been a thing?
Just a few, maybe 6 weeks, 8 weeks.
Oh, of course.
Pretty recent.
I just wanted to respond to just in the chat there. Lucky says, Australian soaps are pretty wild. Lesbians kissing, swearing, the Minogue sisters. They don't give a fuck. Daisy, I know the judge who handled the Texas case. If you do know that, Daisy, then I'd be kind of interested, because if it's the case that I'm thinking of, There was a custody dispute going on, and the 8-year-old child started to transition. I believe the son wanted to be identified as a daughter, wanted to be identified as a girl, and the mother, I think in this Texas case, was a psychologist, clinical psychologist, something like that, along those lines. And so she started to transition, to help the child transition. Hormone replacement therapy was not something that was on the table. That was not being done. That's just Jason thinking that transitioning means the hormones are being given because that helps justify the fact that he's enraged about everything, including the color of the sky. But this makes it much more outrageous. Like you have to commiserate with me now if I tell you this horrible thing they're doing to this kid. I think in this particular case, the dad. The father didn't want to go along with it, and so when the child would come over, they'd switch custody over. He'd have the child would have clothes that were like a girl's, and the father would refuse it. The judge ordered the father to go along with, and from what I understand, the mother was working with a therapist, a separate therapist, specifically for their child. And as they were working on that, the judge ruled that the father had to coordinate with the child's therapy. That was it. That was all the dad, and the dad became, he was kind of outraged by it. He insisted he wasn't going to do it, and the judge was like, "No, you're going to do this." It got when I saw the story initially, I started seeing it first as right wing headlines. It was father denied parental rights, forced to subject child to hormone replacement therapy, and then I looked into it. I'm like, no, the child's not old enough for hormone replacement therapy. That's not a thing. Not yet. And if it was going to be a hormone therapy, it would be a puberty blocker, which are for the most part reversible. So yeah, way jumping the gun. A lot of overreaction.
I mean, if we're talking about hormone therapy, right? Well, insulin's a hormone. So if I decided my kid wasn't a diabetic, should I then be allowed to refuse to engage in her hormone therapy? Like, that's insane.
Yeah. Oh, so people are giving me helpful advice about how to access those Australian subs. Excuse me, how to help my friend access those Australian subs.
Well, I do like to think we're friends.
What's that?
I do like to think we're friends, so I appreciate the advice.
It's been stopped since then, right? But there was, for a long time, this kid was being forced by the mother and influenced by the mother into having these. She was the one that wanted him to transition. He didn't want to transition. That's what he told the father. That's what the father testified in court, and I don't believe the father was lying.
Oh, that settles it.
Of course he doesn't.
Okay, but the judge, who I think Daisy pointed out earlier in the comments, the judge is actually conservative. That wasn't enough. I'm sure the dad doesn't think that he's being dishonest about that. Like, he's saying, like, no, my kid said that he doesn't want this. Like, did your kid actually tell you that? Or did you tell your kid he shouldn't want that?
Right.
And I'm pretty sure that's usually where this stuff kind of gets, especially when you're dealing with an 8-year-old kid. And so the judge was like, no, this care needs to be coordinated by the therapist. And the weird thing about it was there were really two bad things about this. One was the fact that the conservatives immediately were like, well, that dad should have full custody of that kid and shape him up. So I'm like, that's scary. But the second one was that there were all these allegations that the mother, because she's clearly relying on her psychological training and education, she immediately goes into the mode well, okay, my kid is starting to express gender nonconformity, and I'm going to affirm this. I'm going to be supportive and work with my kid through this. According to
disgusting.
Yeah, it is. According to where most experts are going to be on this, most people trained in education, I think she's got at least a master's degree. Like I said, I think it's like clinical psychology. That's what you do. That's the best way to go about doing that. And she pursued therapy, to get a therapist for the kid, somebody separate other than herself. And so there were all these allegations that she's trying to bamboozle the kid. She's brainwashed. And I was like, she did the important thing. And from what I remember hearing, I don't know if the father was complicit with this, but I think I don't think he's like making any effort to come out and tell like right wing app venues saying, hey, she's an ivory tower secular witch who is trying to groom their kid into some weird cult of pagan sexual practices, which is how I think most Christians, fundamentalist Christians anyway, view trans people. So she's some kind of like evil witch character from a Disney movie, and he is just some beleaguered hardcore working guy who's just like, I can't believe this woke country stole my son from me, kind of thing. It was a perfect narrative for them to set up, and it's like that's not actually how this happened. The kid was expressing gender non-conforming traits and wishes, and the mom supported it and affirmed it, which is what you should do. If you try to do the stuff that the dad starts doing, where you tell them, no, you're wrong, put on these overalls and the brightest red flannel shirt I can find you, we're going to the MAGA rally, we'll sort you out. Probably not a healthy way to address this issue.
But to be honest, I mean, that is the narrative. I saw, this was a little while back, but I saw a thing where this concerned Christian moms group like took over a school board meeting, basically berating them because, according to them, the biology class was grooming the kids to be trans and believe that men can get pregnant because they taught them that male seahorses get pregnant and give birth.
Okay.
It was insanity, especially because male seahorses do get pregnant and give birth.
Yeah.
That's just what happens.
Yep, that's how seahorses roll.
Well, I'm trying to look it up because you're not actually providing neutral sources that actually,
because I never saved links from these things, mate. I watched them on YouTube on Fox News and stuff.
I already put it up. It's in the
Fox News would be sued, mate. They'd be sued.
Texas Tribune. I did. It's in the private chat.
I like Repo Sandman's comment here about the anglerfish. Or the frogs whose babies are literally embedded in their back.
Oh yeah,
break through the skin to be born.
Oh god, that is so weird. Ugh.
It's so creepy. Ugh.
Yeah. Intelligent designer, my ass.
I have it up on the screen.
Oh shit! Did I do the wrong link? That doesn't look like what I. Fuck, my bad. Hold on.
Yeah, I think that's about the dad running on the issue. He ran for office and used his kid's issue. Yeah, so I think this is interesting because Daisy brings this up. A conservative judge felt so strongly about this that she tanked her career to rule against the dad.
Yeah,
because they later voted her out because clearly she's in on the globalist agenda or whatever that they whatever.
Oh, it's the Chinese.
Oh, Chinese, is it? Okay.
Yeah, through TikTok.
Who's in control of the space lasers that Marjorie Taylor Greene talks about?
The Jews, of course.
Oh, okay. So it's the Jews and the Chinese and Soros. Cool.
Yep.
Wow. Give me 1 second. Yeah, I think I did the wrong link. My bad.
You did. Internet failed.
See, I'm getting a lot of links from Australia that 16 and older is hormone therapy. There's a false post that people claim 5-year-olds can do it, and that is false. Like that's actually been marked as false. I don't know what you're talking about. 16. Yeah, they're talking about starting it at 14, 2 years earlier, but they're not doing it yet, as far as I understand it. So this is the kind of lies that people spread around that 4-year-olds are getting surgery and stuff. It's not true.
Okay, I made a mistake, mate. But did I make a mistake with that? Did I make a mistake with that Sky News link?
Yes, Jason, you did, Screamy. You did. You've done nothing but make mistakes. You keep claiming that surgeries are happening.
Although, to be honest, if I have a criticism of Mark, he should have just left it at that.
Oh, at that, yeah. No, I mean, especially if he's, if they're just going to keep going with this, like, just point out, like, that's not what this means, and that's the tough thing too, because if you get yelled at, then you can get thrown off your game. Well, like, it's like the situation with the video that I don't know if it was Praise or Jill that put it up there, but the one with the, I think her name's Chloe Cole, the girl that was talking. She is claiming, and nobody can really verify this, but Marjorie Taylor Greene and several other politicians are backing her because she's coming out and speaking out. She's suing the Kaiser Permanente healthcare system out in California for mutilating her or botching her surgery, something like this. So she's put out a lot of claims, made a lot of accusations. It's in her lawsuit against them. And there's a narrative being presented that is being presented by these people. And Jill was the one that wanted to know about it, that she was given some kind of surgical procedure at the age of 16. Still technically a minor. When asked, I tried looking this up, and I'm like, what's going on with this thing? It's still relatively new. It's going to be months before we ever get anything as far as like Kaiser Permanente's statement on it, because they're being sued. So we don't have a statement from that, and it may not get one, because it'll be one of those things where they'll try to get the facts out during the case. You'd have to follow, however the case goes. But yeah, it's like, I think it's interesting because they're just like, well, we got this person here who's making claims about Kaiser Permanente. Why would they lie? Well, I don't want to assume that they're lying, but it is important to keep in mind that they are suing a major corporation.
Right.
So, if they can kind of trend toward, trying to win this support in the court of popular opinion, it's kind of a decent move. I think whoever is advising her on the, like, hey, have Marjorie Taylor Greene show up there, that is short-sighted. It's like
a little bit.
Like, if you wanted to make your case better, I think you probably should avoid grandstanding politicians of any ideology from butting in, horning in on your case. Just maybe don't do that. It's awesome if they're there to provide actual support, actual legal support, but just to be like, hey, I'm going to provide you a day on a dais with a microphone, and I'm going to show up there for the cameras too. It's like, it's pretty clear what that politician wants. So,
yep.
Did I make a mistake with it? I know that, but it's
like Tucker Carlson are making these.
Mate, he did a documentary. You can get the documentary yourself. You can look up each place that he's talking about and see if he's telling the truth yourself.
Too long didn't watch. He didn't.
Right.
What did he think they were operating on a 4-year-old? Who knows? Well, that was the thing too, because when Mark asked him about the surgical thing, he said yes. But I really don't think that Jason can really make the distinction. He hears transitioning. He just thinks they're doing the same thing to a child that you would do to a trans individual who is pursuing hormone replacement therapy and surgeries.
Right.
Just automatic, which is like they wouldn't be doing. That's part of transitioning. That's not all of transitioning.
Right. And the amount of HRT that you have to go through before anybody will give you gender affirming surgery, like, you can't do it at 4. It's just not a thing that you can do because of how long you have to be on HRT first.
Yep. Oh me, he is getting a bit animated. Yeah, that's putting it mildly. Yeah, Jason gets animated.
Come on, get it.
Oh shit! Sorry, turn that back on too quick. He's still he's still about 140 on the decibel range there.
Watch it, debunk it, come back and shock us all, mate.
Hey, Jay.
Debunk it and shock us all. It's not Mark's responsibility to go watch an hour-long quote-unquote documentary made by Tucker Carlson and debunk it for you. Like, this this is a weird thing for Jason to say. Like, oh yeah, you want to debunk it? Why don't you go out there? You prove it to prove Tucker Carlson wrong. Like, Mark's going to have to stand in line because it's already, or actually he's going to show up and the line's cleared out. There's just garbage and some ticker tape laying around because he missed the opportunity. After the first
because 400,000 other people already did it.
Yeah. Any tweets about that documentary were ratioed to hell and back. It's over. But here's Jason, like, I don't know if you've heard about this guy named Tucker Carlson, but he's got this secret documentary about that lays out the truth of transgender issues. Like, oh, Jason. Like, I mean, it probably takes a long time for the TV signal to get all the way to where he's at in Tasmania, but holy Lord.
Well, especially with the time vortex.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, when it reaches him in 1920 or 1880.
Jason, can I ask you a question, bro?
He's just pissing me off because he keeps making the same claim over and over, and I keep telling him over and over the same things.
No, you keep making the same claim over and over.
But Jason, can I ask you a question?
Do some work, mate. Stop sitting there freaking blubbering and.
He's just not even listening. Like, Q's asked him, "Can I ask you a question?" And he's still screaming at Mark. Yeah.
You go do some work. You go get the documentary. Go get it. Debunk Tucker. Come back and say, Jason, he was wrong about all these things.
Well, this is happening to
claims, Jason.
This is happening to young girls younger than 18 in America. The young girl that I just showed you, Chloe, her story, they started giving her puberty blockers when she was 13, and she had her double mastectomy at 15. So she's 17. She was 17 when she realized, hey, I can't even breastfeed my children if I were to have children.
I am wondering if he's referencing the story about Alex. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but basically the kid's mom, right, went to, what is it called, the Free Press, Bari Weiss's thing, and told this big, long story about how the doctors forced this on her and all this stuff, right? And the kid whose actual name is Alex didn't actually want to do it, but the doctors made her, which is obvious, ridiculous on its face. But then later, the kid actually wrote her own response to it, saying none of this is true. Right? I asked them not to publish this because it's not true. I never said that. I don't feel that way. And they just went ahead and did it anyway.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, because she was. Yeah, the daughter was feuding with the mom over it, and the mom does not seem. I do remember that. Yeah, and I'm kind of wondering if maybe that is what Jill's conflating, because the thing that I don't, maybe the one that he's talking about, the Chloe from the video. Maybe those were similar circumstances. I don't know, but that's not. I don't think it's the same one. And from what I understand, the only, I mean, it might be, but I mean, well, no, it can't be, because in this case, this girl kind of started this on her own. She's like, I had the surgery, I regretted it, but the claims that she's making haven't been disputed by Kaiser Permanente. So she's making a claim that she did have a mastectomy. The claim that I've heard is that she was under the age of 18. Jill is just coming out here and saying, oh, she had a double mastectomy at 15. I don't know if there's anything to support that yet. I don't think that that's actually been verified. The puberty blockers, which I think he's just conflating with hormone replacement therapy, is just, well, they put her on that, and then when she's 15 years old, they gave her a double mastectomy. And the way he's just very cavalier, like, oh, they just went and did it. I'm like, I don't think that's how this played out for her. I don't even know that it's medically possible, because if you're on puberty blockers, then you don't go through puberty. So how do you grow breasts to remove? Yeah. Yeah, Dustin. Yeah, he's talking about the Chloe Cole story, and from my understanding is like Kaiser Permanente has not officially responded to it because they're being sued. So that's their whole take on it. And I don't think any of the claims are going to come out until they either settle this or whatever. I kind of suspect it would, if there's medical malpractice involved, if there was something that was done that, maybe they performed a surgery and somebody was too young, my guess would be they would be pursuing settling it.
Right.
It'll just depend on how they end up taking it. But if she's trying to spin this up into something more than it was, that could be, because she gets into a lot of weird thing like, oh, I have these infections and stuff, and I'm like, okay, some of the stuff that you're talking about is something that anyone might have to go through post-op for any procedure. The idea
for any operation.
Yeah, like, well, I'm now suffering from this because they forced me to do this. I'm like, okay. It's like, okay, these are your claims. We'll take them seriously. We'll go from there. But until people can actually evaluate when did these procedures happen, how long she's in therapy, et cetera, we'll see. And like Daisy said, why would Kaiser want to push a surgery that costs them money? Yeah, and I don't know how I don't know how Chloe Cole's family paid for this. So
yeah.
The whole thing. It's very, very confusing. The whole thing is really confusing. So
this is happening to very young children in America. So I don't know what's going on in Australia, but in America, this is being done to very, very young children. It's being advocated at the very highest levels by government, the Democratic Party in particular.
Well, I don't think politicians.
So if you support the Democrats, you support
Jill.
mutilation of children.
No, you don't. That's just a stupid thing to say.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
Jill says, Jefferson, laughing my ass. Why are we trying to make sense of what Jill is lying about? At this point, it's more or less to just kind of sift through the ignorance that's on display there, and kind of doing this because Mark Reed was brave enough / insane enough to go into this room to attempt to correct these guys on their weird takes. Well, not that I'm doing him any
last
favor.
I checked, if we're talking about a particular party or ideology supporting, this crazy surgery on kids, is Jill aware of child beauty pageants? And plastic surgery for those.
I think I think years ago this was brought up, and I think there was I think it was I think his name is Nicola. I think he brought that up to him. I can't remember who the individual brought it up to him, and he's like, "Sorry, is that wrong?" Because I think in Jill's case at the time, he was making an argument that any of this stuff is sexualizing kids, which is to me, that's a weird take that I find odd. That if my boy wants to dress like a girl, and if my girl wants to dress like a boy, and if I go along with that, I'm grooming my kid. I'm sexualizing my kid, and I find that I find that take really odd. Like, wait a minute, what are you revealing to me right now?
My oldest daughter is, she's 22. She likes flannel, and she wears she doesn't wear the typical fit of jeans that a lot of women her age wear. She likes them a little baggier, right? That isn't transitioning. That's just what she likes to wear. It's not sexualizing her.
Yeah. It's just to me, that's like, well, because if that follows, it's like, well, wait a minute. If I'm dressing my boy like a boy and I'm dressing my girl like a girl, isn't that sexualizing the kid too?
Right.
Oh no, that's totally appropriate. Like, wait, why? Because it's pretty clear that there are feminine clothes out there. This doesn't seem to happen to guys. Like, this never happens to guys. But there are feminine clothes for girls that are designed in such a way that are too feminine.
Yeah.
They're too revealing. There's a midriff and back skin, and they're too tight or too loose or too flowing or too deep, or is a scoop cut. No, we can't have this. And just this constant fixation on women's bodies or girls' bodies, and then directly conflating this with clothes, and then trying to kind of shift this over. So if a boy wants to wear girls' clothes of any kind, that kid, there's something wrong there. And then likewise for the girl, if the girl's like, no, I want to wear jeans, heavy boots and like a heavy leather jacket and flannel. Like, okay, like it's
Yeah.
it's like I don't get how the sexualization thing comes in here. At least for the kids. Like now, if either of my kids wants to wear lingerie, that's a weird one.
Right.
But for whatever reason, like the pageants that you're talking about, they'll parade kids out there in like gowns that have nothing to do with being a kid,
Right.
and they'll doll them up with like 3 or 4 pounds of makeup on their heads. Like, what are you doing? You're treating your kid like a poodle.
Yeah, if we're going to complain about sexualizing kids, holy shit.
Or at the very least, just objectifying them. It's like
Right.
this is the kind of thing that you would put a show dog through, and you're doing this to a small human being that you have the responsibility of guiding up through life, and you painted it and put it in a dress and threw it out there. Like what the like now it's one thing if any of this stuff is for like theater or for fun. If they're doing something like they do these things where like young theater acting camps will do like drag shows and stuff, and they'll basically put it they're like a weekend long or something like that, and you can go and learn like a drag routine, makeup, costumes, song and dance routines, that kind of stuff. It's like, yeah, okay, if the kid's interested in doing that kind of stuff because they're into this kind of performance, that I get. But when it's like a kind of dominating parent, the domineering parent, like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna glue a wig to your head and shoot you in the face with a clown makeup gun, and then send you out there and win mommy some money. It's just
pretty
odd.
much.
Yeah.
Period. I don't think the politicians should be the arbiters of what is right and wrong for children. I think it should be pediatricians and people that actually know what they're talking about when it comes to the human body. Politicians don't know anything about whether it's safe or not to give hormone replacement therapy to somebody of this age. I certainly don't. That's why we have doctors. That's why when I get injured, I don't treat myself. I go to a doctor. Like, why are we suddenly pretending that we should just decide when this should be done?
Hey,
Doctors
Mark.
don't decide. You do. The parents
Mark.
decide whether or not the child will have this sort of
Mate,
gender.
look at.
The parents don't decide that.
No.
I don't know what he's talking about. Like the parents either decide to support or reject, the what the child wants to identify as. And if they're affirming it, at least to the point where they're willing to support the kid to get them into therapy, to see a therapist and discuss it, to see where the kid's going to go with this. That's all this is. If the doctors are dealing with this in coordination with the therapist, then they might discuss things like puberty blockers while that child is in therapy. But this
and the parents aren't deciding out of the blue, like, okay, just let's go get our kid surgery. No, they only even have the option to make that choice after the doctors and mental health professionals say this is something that you can do that won't fuck up your kid.
Exactly. Yeah. Every time between Jill and Jason, all you end up hearing is this, like, no, the parents are doing this to the kid, or the doctors are doing that. Like, no doctor is going to put themselves in a position where they're just going to do, like, you know what you ought to do? Transition. What if I'm just going to change your name, hey, you know what, Victor? Vivian's better. So this is what we're going to do, and the mom's all into it. Like it's bizarre to me. Like, and it would help if these guys would pay attention to the stories that are out there, that are available from parents of kids that begin to express gender nonconformity and how they struggle with, like, we want to be there for our kid. We don't want to screw this up. We don't want to scare them. We don't want to hurt them. And even those parents, as affirming as they can be, still worry about missteps and stuff. And most of them end up in a situation where, like, look, we have to trust that, what our kid is going through. We need to make sure that they have access to a good therapist that can help guide them through this and is willing to work with a doctor if this proceeds down a path where they know they're going to commit themselves, if they are dysphoric or become dysphoric, that they're going to commit themselves to something surgical or hormone therapy based later on in life. That's really the best. That's the best that you can do. It really isn't any more complicated. I don't. I mean, it's a very complicated thing, but I don't think that for lay people trying to lay into this, like if these guys, if their crazy paranoid imaginations were correct, yes, they have. Then they would have every right to be a little bit hysterical, a little bit outraged by this. But in order to justify their outrage, they've had to gin all this stuff up.
Right.
So it's like you made this stuff up so you can virtue signal about it. Like you can't tell me that you care about these people.
No, it's only Democrats and liberals who virtue signal, Jefferson.
Oh, right. Sorry, my bad. I forgot.
Religious conservatives are just telling the truth.
Oh, right. Yep. Jeez. See, that's why it's good to have a guest on here to remind me of these kinds of things. Yeah.
A lot of those people that transitioned in Australia that want to go back to their original sex, a lot of them were 18 and 20 when they transitioned, and later on down the track, when all the doting people died away and everything just went back to normal, they realized they could never have children again, and they wanted to transition back to the original sex. And some of them transitioned back and then killed themselves after they transitioned back because they were mutilated and couldn't have children and were just depressed. So, I mean, you have a look at the link and then you tell me that they're lying, and if that was lies, it would have been blocked. It would have been taken down years ago.
Yes, but you have
right, because that's the reason why. Look, if atheism is based on lies, why hasn't it been taken down years ago? Right. Jesus, Jason, like, come on, man. There's nothing more to say about that. Let's listen to what Mark responds with.
Other things that are done that you're not having a problem with, like breast implant removal and removal of tattoos. We make a lot of decisions that we want to change later.
This is not something
that we should not give people. Excuse me, Jill. I'll just finish. It does not mean that we should not give people the freedom to make those decisions, because there are people as well that have transitioned and they basically say it's the happiest thing they've ever done. They're incredibly happy. And
where are those people
at? Of people who are
where are those people? It's most of them.
Yeah,
the vast majority.
Yeah, what I think is really shameful here is that, and I think Praise will bring this up too, like as if it's okay to say if you cite the number of people. But before I get onto that tangent, I got to do this. Remember when Jason Ezard was talking about the children being sexy and cuties? Pepperidge Farm members. Benghazi, I got to admit, I forgot about those takes from Jason Ezard because I was so appalled by the takes I was getting from the weird guy, the guy that used to hang out with Smokey Saint all the time. And oh man, I'm blanking on his name. He was so strange. But he was the one that would say things like, I watched that cute. I struggled physically watching it. And everybody was just like, what are you talking about? And it got weirder from there.
I didn't watch it, but I saw a couple of clips of it. I struggled physically with revulsion.
Yeah. I mean, and the whole point of the movie is that these girls are just kind of fucking dumb. That seems to be like, oh, they're struggling to figure out themselves and their sexuality at a young age in a society, blah, 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 blah. And the whole thing with the girl being from a conservative family, they're an immigrant family and they're in France, and France is pretty much, you can pretty much do whatever you want in France within reason. And so, but even I thought it was like, yeah, it's an imbalanced movie. I don't get it, but I also don't understand, like, if you're watching the movie from the perspective that these guys were like, well, what they're doing here is they're like, no, not entirely. But yeah, their takes were just absolutely bizarre and disturbing. Oh yeah, but what was the part here? He was
and suicide.
Yeah, I think Praise is actually going to say this next.
Can be linked to the way that they are treated as trans people. I can find
they surveyed 50 trans, and out of 50 of them, I think it was 45% experienced pain while having sex and constant pain after the transition surgery.
I have no idea. I don't know where he's.
So do most of my ex-wives. So.
Nicholas Whitmire. Yes, thank you, Doubting Thomas. His name was Nicholas Whitmire. Yeah, I shouldn't have forgotten that name. Man, that was a creepy dude. Anyway.
45 out of 40.
This experiment's not looking too good for your side, Mark. The Bible is going to win out in this one, as it does with all of your experiments you do on our children. But the what happened to this young girl.
Like how I just kind of like slipped that in there too. All these experiments we do on our kids.
Especially when they bring up the suicide thing, right? Oh, they're doing it because of this mental illness or whatever, not because of how they're treated. And it's like, okay, yes, the suicide rates are higher for trans people. 80% of suicides are men. Does that mean being male is a mental illness?
Yeah, exactly.
Or is it what most of them cite, which is feeling isolated, rejected, not cared for? Like, maybe that's it.
Well, and it's weird to me because somebody they'll be like, well, hey, you said that I was wrong to say that trans people have a mental disorder, and I just pointed out a statistic that shows how many of them have experienced suicidal ideation. It's like, we both know that's not what you meant.
Right.
That was not the disorder, quote unquote, that you were talking about. Because then they'll turn around in other sayings and say, well, if it's not a disorder, then why would they be so suicidal? Like, wait a minute, you told me that you were justified in saying that they were disordered because of the suicidal ideation, but now you're saying the suicidal ideation is a symptom of the disorder. What's the disorder? Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to maybe like recant your bullshit statement there? Because I'm pretty sure what you did there was a complete goal shift. Like, yeah, it's just dishonest.
No, there's two goalposts on a football field. They just kicked it to the other one.
Yeah, exactly. And then pretended that's not what they were doing. Yeah.
Boy, was she consulted a liberal therapist and was diagnosed with dysphoria by a gender quote unquote specialist the following month. So these are healthcare workers who are supposed to be trained to follow some care system, even for children's parents, but because of California's conversion therapy bans, there was little other treatments that could be suggested for dysphoria.
So because they couldn't go to an abusive psychopath that would put them through what the majority of medical professionals would say is abuse, medically unnecessary, abusive. Yeah, no, go ahead.
Well, okay, if Jill wants to talk about suicide rates, let's talk about the suicide rates of people who go through conversion therapy.
Exactly. And then we'll just use that as an example of like, well, clearly it's bad because people want to die afterward. But here's the thing, though. This is the sort of 1-2 punch, though. It's like, oh, well, we put them through this terrible experience, and then they feel really bad about themselves. We can always offer them Jesus as a way of feeling better, and then they'll become Christians forever. And it's like, yeah, until they realize that they're still attracted to the same sex. Like that's only going.
And that Jesus tells them they're going to hell because of it.
Yeah, the interesting thing about the wiring of the human brain and the way the body works is that once you remove somebody from that, the only way that conversion therapy can work is if you induce a trauma in somebody that is so ingrained as to be basically pathological. Like you basically break them. That's the only way it works. And for those that it doesn't work, like it works for a little while, and then as they heal, they go back to where they were because their body is going to try to achieve its normal homeostasis. And if those pathways kind of clear up and they start to recover, they will go back to experiencing those same feelings with the same feelings of attraction without the corresponding nausea or physical pain or whatever that they try to associate into them. Yeah, it's a brutal way of doing anything. I think, and if by that standard, if that actually worked, you could actually do this to. I think Mr. Batman had recommended this. This is what we should be doing to anybody who's also not a Christian. You just send them to camps and abuse them until they become that. Like what you guys are talking about.
Sounds like a Mr. Batman take.
Yeah, it's like what you're talking about is forced attrition. Now, ask the Catholics how well that works, right? Because
there was a Reformation that happened because of it, and a war that killed more people than the plague.
Yeah. You just don't maybe go down. Like if you understood history, I think you'd understand that this great idea you think you're having is not a new one, and it's been done, and it didn't work. So,
for her condition. So the only solution is to chop off and turn her into a boy. So that's what's going on in America. I don't know what's going on.
No, it isn't. That's what's going on inside Jill's fevered mind. It's not going on in America. It's just that's going on in the America presented to Jill when he's high on bath salts and just doom
and watching the Tucker Carlson documentary.
Yeah, and doom scrolling through what the One America News thing on network or whatever own.
Mm-hmm.
Going on in Australia again, but that's what's going on here.
Well, generally, the treatment, other than the obvious with hormone replacement therapy and gender reassignment surgery, is to just do nothing. A lot of these kids end up being gay or some kind of bisexual or pan, and they have some sort of ideas. You just let them get to about the age of 26, and most of them just grow out of it.
So now we're conflating trans and gender identity with sexual orientation.
Yeah,
great.
Because apparently, if you transition from a man to a woman, you will become attracted to men, even if you weren't before.
I don't like this. Yeah, I think the only thing that Mark would have to do in this situation is like, have any of you guys actually talked to trans people? Because you've made comments that you have. Jason has said that he encountered trans people at a bar in Sydney, which means I don't think he had a very deep conversation with any of them, especially if there's any truth to the claim that when the Christianity came up, they started like, poo, poo, gross.
I kind of wonder what Jason was doing there.
Well, I mean, I don't think that as far as I know, gay bars are quite popular. There's lots of them because I think he said they were in Cindy. So the fact that they wandered into one, that wouldn't surprise me. Given his outrage, though, that does make it kind of weird.
Yeah.
Jason, if you were hanging out with friends and they dragged you into one of these places, like how liquored up were you? Because you talk like somebody who's like you want to lead your own Tasmanian chapter of the Spanish Inquisition. But no, it's just a couple months ago. Me and my mate dragged me into this gay bar. I'm like, were you just there trying to get directions to get away from there? Was that how it works, Jason? Like, or were you just so completely, pissed that they could have walked you into a ravine, and said they were at a bar? Like,
I mean, he is a fundy Christian, so he's very obvious. He's easily led into crazy shit. So
it's just between his story and then like Will claiming that he knows people. It's like, well, have you actually had a conversation with him? Like, really discussed this with him? Because you wouldn't say something as dismissive as, oh, well, if you just put off the transition part, which for them again is the hormones and the surgery, which it's not. If you just put that off long enough, you find out that they're just gay or bi or pan, and then they're fine. Like,
right.
Are they?
Well, and to be honest, maybe Jason was there because, I mean, where my neighborhood, they literally call it the rainbow, the rainbow district. That's the word. And yeah, gay bars are actually awesome because the music's better and the drinks are stronger.
Yeah.
So
I kind of wish we had where I'm at. We had two that were kind of long-standing favorites, and I think they're both gone now. The one just happened to be in a bad side of town, and the club was like actually like if you were inside the club, it was like a little like a solace from like kind of the rest of the neighborhood, but then the rest of the neighborhood kind of pulled it down. And then unfortunately they had a couple people go in there on like ladies straight night. Walked in there and there was a gunfight. And once that happened, you couldn't get anybody anywhere near the building. It was like, up till that point, anything violent that had ever happened a block away from there. It always happened out there. When you were inside the club, it was safe. And then somebody kind of violated that, and that was it. Spell was broken. And somebody bought the place and tried to open it up as like a hookah bar or something like that. And even then, people were like, nope. It's cursed. Once somebody goes in there and Yosemite Sam's the ceiling with some pistols, that's it. The party's over.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well, yeah, I'm going to play a little bit. You want to wrap this up here pretty quick? Because I don't know if there's anything towards the end that you wanted to see. Because most of the offensive shit is right front loaded at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I think the bulk of the rest of the video is just Jill being a condescending prick.
Okay. Let's see how bad.
So
does Jason calm down, or does he get louder at parts?
There comes a point where he's just not really involved anymore.
Okay, probably passed out into his carpet. Yeah.
Oh, that's generally what happens.
Right. Yeah. That's what the studies show. That's what the data shows.
That's fine, but you're sort of taking an incident where things have gone wrong and sort of saying, well, if things are misdiagnosed for one person, then we should stop all of it. And that isn't how we evaluate medical procedures and things that are done. That isn't how we do it at all. So
that's not how we're doing it.
Well,
hold on. That's not how we're doing it. If you were listening to some of the citations, 45% is not 1 out of 100. So I don't know where you're getting 1 or 1% or.
I'm curious where he's getting 45.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about this is that if somebody accuses Jill always accuses people of doing, when he gets into his abortion discussions, and somebody brings up cases of rape and incest.
Mm-hmm.
Then what, or even worse, if they bring up the situation, because I don't know if he's actually committed to that. I think that he's one of those guys that if a woman's attacked, even if it's a family member, they should be forced to give birth. I really think he's on that page.
He definitely is.
But if you bring up the issue of like, well, what about somebody where you're talking about like no viability for the child, and the pregnancy coming to term could very, very likely kill the mom, he'll basically say, well, you're just arguing the exception. It's like, okay, that exception is the reason why medically necessary abortions need to be something you guys consider. If you're talking about elective abortions and you want that limited or banned, you need to make the distinction, because when we ask you what the purpose of asking you about what about the life of the mom isn't to say, well, it follows that if the mom's body could be endangered by a pregnancy she wants to carry to term, but the child is not viable and carrying it to term will kill her, then that means that elective abortions at any stage should be on the table. If they want to say, well, that doesn't follow. You're right, it doesn't follow. But the purpose of bringing the question up is to get clarification from the activist who's against abortion. Say, what do you mean by abortion? Because if you want to outlaw that, that's not elective abortion.
Yeah, but I have seen someone who would agree with Jill in Congress testifying that that's not an abortion.
Right. And the problem there is like, no, when this
it is.
like, yeah, exactly, like it's an abortion. The problem was the movement fucked up, because when they started out, they were against elective abortions. That was the thing. And when everybody came up like, well, what about the life of the, no, don't worry about that. That's a doctor taking extreme care in a situation that's very rare. Of course, not in a situation like we wouldn't consider that an abortion. Of course, it's an abortion. And by the time the rhetoric got dialed up to it, it got so bad that when women were in those exceptional cases, the doctors treated it like an elective abortion, and she had to fly to another state to get the procedure to save her life.
Right. So I don't think they even understand what it means to what the word abort means.
No, they don't. They don't.
I
tried to have a long discussion with Jill about that, and I was him, Veckel, and I think somebody else, and I'm like, when you guys are talking about this, you're talking about elective abortion, right? Yeah. And I'm like, okay, so the situation of a woman who doesn't have a viable pregnancy, oh, you're arguing for the exception. I'm not arguing for that. I'm trying to get some kind of definitional sense about what you're talking about, because that's an abortion too. That's an abortion the mom didn't want to have, but the doctor is saying she needs to have if she wants to live. And I would agree. It is the very rarest of cases. The vast majority of abortions are elective. They were anyway when it was legal. And the way that they work is that 85% of them happen within the first term, and they're usually done by medication.
Yeah.
Those are elective abortions. That's what you guys pretended at the beginning you wanted to stop. And you weren't careful with your dialogue. And then it became a point where hospitals were so terrified of the advocacy and controversy that you ginned up over a very basic medical procedure that even doctors who wanted to perform a late-term abortion, what you guys call late-term abortion, to save the life of the mother, couldn't be done in certain institutions or in certain states.
Right.
And they're proud of it. They're proud of those are gains we made on the issue. It's like you confused the issue for generations of people.
These are literally the people who told a 12 or 13-year-old girl that she wasn't mature enough to make the decision about whether or not she was going to abort, and never thought about it. Okay, well then is she mature enough to raise a fucking kid?
Right. Yeah. And the other thing about this is, like, you know, the weird kind of, well, we don't want there to be state apparatuses to care for anybody because we don't want a social safety net to become a hammock. But at the same time, they're like, when somebody brings up, well, wait, what's going to happen with these children that are forced? You are forcing women legally to give birth to these kids. Many of them are going to be unwanted, or if they're wanted, the woman's not going to be in a position to act, you know, be able to care for them. And they just act like, oh, well, you bleeding heart liberals will come up with some kind of fucking charity scheme to take care of them, right? Like, what kind of a cynical douchebag are you? You don't have a plan, so you want to make a mess to abide by what your interpretation of the Bible, and then leave the cleanup to a bunch of people who you just admitted actively care more. I've actually seen comments like that from some of these right-wing Christians. Like, oh, it doesn't matter. Somebody will come up with some kind of program for them. Like, that's your responsibility. You want to force women to give birth, but you don't have a mechanism to take care of them or the kid afterward. You are a negligent piece of shit and a horrible human being and a worse citizen. What the fuck is wrong with you?
However, that is a biblical approach. So, you know, Daisy makes a good point. You know, they only see women as incubators. And yeah, they're not people. They're axolotl tanks for Dune fans.
All right, let's play a little bit more of this and see if this gets any spicier.
Anonymity, or something that isn't really happening. Now,
Someone search it for me, because I can't search it.
Well, technically, 45% is suicidal ideation. Suicidality is 56% in teenagers who were surveyed. So
I mean, we're only going to get more.
Yeah, but that's a
data, and the data is only going to support.
You're not actually looking for why the suicidal tendencies are actually occurring. You're only looking at blaming it on their status.
It's because they're being treated badly. Some of them are being treated badly. He's right. Mark's right. Some of them are being treated badly, but these days a lot of them aren't, and they're even talking. But they're even talking about allowing young children in grade school to talk to doctors about gender reassignment surgery without their parents. They're talking about it. Not they've done it. They're talking about it in one state in America. I saw it on Fox News or whatever it was, one of those things that I watch, and it would be taken down off YouTube if it was a lie, mate.
Yeah, well.
I'm not sure how much further in the video it is, to be honest, and I know we've been on for quite a while. There is a point where Jill basically says that's why we don't trust anything but Christian professionals, because they're the only ones who tell the truth. Which, okay. You're literally just acknowledging that you live in an echo chamber, but sure.
Yeah, and I find that odd too, because it's like, if he was diagnosed with a serious illness, would he then immediately ask that physician, wait a minute, are you a Christian? And then I wonder, to what degree is he going to like dive into that? Like, okay, you're a Christian. Are you Catholic? Yeah. Oh, okay. So you're a liar. And then gets up and walks out. I'm fine. Like, I just, yeah. Yeah, let's see here. Let me speed this up a bit and see.
About anything.
But without the parents' consent, grade school, we're talking like 9-year-olds and 8-year-olds and 10-year-olds. I mean, do you think an 8-year-old or 9-year-old or 10-year-old should be able to talk to a doctor without without the parents' consent about those?
Yes, yes, they should.
Yes, they should be able to talk to a doctor. Jesus Christ, like what and I'm pretty sure Jason does not have kids. Jill has said he does not have kids. So I'm trying to figure out like where this comes from, because I've known people, by the time they've had kids, they're just like, no one's going to tell me what's best for my kid, And my complaint are like, well, do you send your kid to school? Yeah. Well, it sounds like that you agree that there's a small group of professionals out there that know better about what to tell your kid, because you're not teaching them.
Not these people. It's daycare.
But it's exactly. It's like all you're doing is admitting that the school is useless, but it keeps them, it keeps adult eyes on them long enough for you to go work.
Yeah.
And then come back. So so we've just subsidized babysitting. Because you don't really care about this. And then for him to say this, like, do you think it's acceptable for a 8, 9, 10-year-old to go see a doctor? Absolutely. How would Jason react if a 9-year-old kid went to a school nurse or a doctor on their own and said, I can't go home because my dad's going to beat me to death? Should that kid not be allowed to go see that medical professional? You fucking moron. Like,
exactly.
You need to bring your kid here, Captain Abuse. I need to see your kid, like, and not in a to-go bag either, you monster. Bring him over here. I'm sure that parent's going to take that seriously. I'm like, what? Or if
they're 13 and their abusive father got them pregnant, like, should they have to have his permission to tell a doctor about that?
Yeah.
That's insane.
It's stunningly ignorant. It's like I don't. Well, if they go there, then that doctor's going to trick them and try to turn them into and try to change their orientation or their identity or something. Like,
right.
They went there because their mom spent most of last night drunk putting cigarettes out on their back, and that's the mom you wanted to bring the kid in. Come on now. Yeah.
Exactly.
Sort of things. Yeah, well, they're talking about making it that there be no adult there, that they don't tell the parents. So I saw that on the news. I can't remember where it was.
Let's say 50.
I mean, no,
let's say just
parent, a guardian.
Fuck me.
Yeah. Can we let other people get words in? Like, fuck, bro.
Let's say that 56% is wildly.
No, we can't.
We won't have any talking during this talk.
Like, they may have the desire, but they don't have the capacity. They can't do it.
Yeah.
This room is a toxic mess, mate. Like, yeah.
Let's just say for the sake of saying something.
Yes, it is.
Yep. Accurately diagnosed, Mark. Accurately diagnosed. Yep.
The 56% is wildly inaccurate. The suicide rates for adult trans people is 19 times higher than that of the general population.
And they're treated badly by the general population.
They're treated badly.
Oh my god.
It's gonna default.
Yeah, well, that's higher. Wait.
Literally
that's
told
higher
that
than
they don't exist.
Yeah.
Like, that's gonna fuck you up.
Yeah.
Higher than Jews in concentration camps. That's higher than ex-slaves. It's higher than any other group of marginalized people that have ever existed on the planet. And even if that's mildly,
it's their fault. Is that where Will Kincaid's going with this?
I think maybe.
It's like, well, it's out of whack. Like, okay, like if that's true, just concede the point. If it's true that this group experiences a higher rate of suicide, of actual suicide attempts and successful suicides than enslaved people or Jews during the Holocaust, maybe following the Holocaust, what does that say about the way our society treats them?
Exactly.
Because I'm pretty sure.
I mean, at least the Nazis acknowledged that there were Jews.
Yeah, the idea that and the whole point of bringing that up is to bring out that, like, consider the circumstances of the American slave. Consider the circumstances of a Jew that spent time in a concentration camp. Yeah, I'm considering those circumstances. This is horrible, right? And transgender people are even higher than that. What's wrong with them? What are their circumstances? Like, nothing about this is being kept equal by any of these guys except for Mark and Ginger. That's it.
Yeah.
It's just this bad take.
You can take that logic and use it with concentration camp survivors and slaves. Like, well, they commit suicide more than, free white Christian people. So what's wrong with them? It's like, well, maybe it's because you put them in a goddamn concentration camp, idiot.
Right. And maybe the fact that in this particular society, if a group of trans people are just as suicidal, it might be because they feel like they're living in hostile territory.
Right.
It says something about their circumstances. Don't bring up the circumstances of other groups that also had high suicide rates and then pretend like the circumstances of the group that you're pointing out don't matter. Like, what the fuck?
That's that goalposts at either end thing.
Yeah. Yeah. What is Quentin doing? Q is in there because he is. I don't know. I think he's had a couple of discussions about these issues with Praise before, but also because I don't know. There was some drama about William Freeman or something on Guru Mania's channel, something, and Q's been talking to Praise about some of this stuff. He was actually on there for like an hour and a half yesterday. So. But yeah, if I don't know if he's trying to like help educate these guys because there's not enough Ginger Nation there to counteract the echo chamber that's happening between Praise, Will, Jason, and Jill, and the news unit who I think probably passed out on his desk, which not judging. I've done it. I've been there. I fall asleep during streams. It happens.
I've heard it. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
even if that's mildly inaccurate or wildly inaccurate, let's drop it down another fucking 17%. Let's say it's 200. Let's just say it's 2 times more. Like that's still really high. Like
overrepresentation. Yeah.
It's a massive overrepresentation.
Yeah, to blame that.
So clearly somebody's doing something wrong, and it doesn't change. And it doesn't change when people get gender reassignment or hormone replacement therapy. In fact, it goes up. Right. So I mean, I don't know.
There'll be more data soon to come on this experiment on our children. There'll be more.
The
data.
Home Office in the UK has this data. The CDC has this data. It's like this is not like fucking.
What is he talking about?
You got me. It's
this
so hard to follow because it's words out.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was like, look, I don't think any of these statistics, and the problem with this kind of stuff too is this is a little bit like how people deal with weed and steroids. For the longest time, the Institutes of Health, you couldn't put forward a research study with a proposition about anything beneficial about weed. You could only do research studies on things that basically put it in a position that was bad. You were going to study its cancer-causing compounds, or rate of addiction, or could it induce psychosis? Things like this. You could possibly get funding that way. But if you want to be like, hey, I wonder if smoking weed helps prevent diabetes or something like that. No, we're not going to look at it that way. It's a Schedule 2 or it's a Schedule 1. It's never happening. You can't do it that way. Steroids are kind of the same.
It's taken 50 years just to get back to where we were in the 50s as far as research on things like LSD for addiction treatment.
Right, exactly. And things like steroid use. Most of the stuff that people understand about steroid use is anecdotal and illegal. It's all through like now it's more CrossFit than anything else, but like bodybuilding, powerlifting, Olympic. Most anybody that's in some kind of competitive sport, and if they're in like the physique stuff or like just winning an exercise CrossFit stuff, they're taking some kind of performance enhancing drug, and most of that stuff is not well understood. It just isn't. And so the more and then they try to act like, oh, well, if you talk to the right people, you can get information on this. You have to talk to people who basically experimented on themselves. With the weed thing, it's basically there's a community, there's generations of people who've been smoking weed and working on it and growing it and changing it, that they know kind of what it does. But in terms of having like a lot of hard data in support of like its potential health benefits, we don't have anything really all that concrete, other than the fact that if you smoke a lot of it, you burn it and inhale that smoke into your lungs, it's probably not great for you over time.
That's Pshaw.
That just might be.
That's bunk science. Smoking is good for you.
But like in terms of like trying to say like, hey, edibles or extracts, salves, CBD versus THC, to what extent are these things beneficial? Scientifically, the hard data is really, really mixed, because it's just, even now, because it's still a Schedule 1, you can't research it that way.
Right.
And a lot of this stuff, when it comes to like trans issues, it's poorly understood, poorly represented, and it's so fraught with a bunch of different, like a lot of people trying to like spin it up to serve some kind of like, some kind of agenda, that it's very difficult to just get hard data on like what's going on with them. And when they're talking about things like, well, hey, we can discuss things like their suicide rates, or like, okay, fine. You're talking about, those are being collected from surveys.
Right.
Who are they asking, and at what time in their life, and at what point? You know.
Well, yeah, because most of like when they're talking about the suicidality, yeah, most of it's in like their late teens, early 20s that they're surveying them. And it's like, well, that's also the age group most likely to do that shit.
Dustin, are you telling me having muscles so big you can't reach your own ass is not 100% natural? I mean, if you have, I think there's a genetic condition that you can have that allows you to hypertrophy that easily. So in that case, yeah, all natural, baby. But yeah, if you're that muscle bound, probably you've been taking some things to get that way.
Oh yeah.
And your beard goes from from just under your eyes to the top of your feet. That could also be a sign.
There may be something off there.
John says, "What did you say, Jefferson? I couldn't hear you over my bong." No, I didn't say anything about smoking, so don't worry about it. I only said that that might be the only thing that they do know is that if you burn a substance and inhale the smoke into your lungs, that might not be great over time. Other than that, the benefits and the risks of weed are still kind of mysterious. But what we do know anecdotally and through some decent statistical studies is that communities that have more weed smokers than alcohol consumers are generally much more peaceful, less violent.
Go figure.
Yeah.
I love Repo Sandman's comment here. It's 4:20 somewhere. Be right back.
If you live in Australia, it was, is, and will be 4:20. I mean, it's just always. Yeah, it's whatever time you need it to be.
Right, exactly.
Yes, but
this isn't my
designations on the data that experts haven't said. You're basically, and Will, you won't even tell me what field
experts
you're in.
Added that data.
No, I won't because I don't like you.
Yeah, which is fine. I mean, I don't expect you to like me. It's just, usually somebody who is an expert in their field will say the field and sort of say their credentials.
Well, it's like you said earlier, if I had a big dick, I wouldn't brag about it, right?
I can't teach you like an...
this is where Kincaid starts talking about his dick.
You don't need to see...
Yeah, I'm gonna fast forward to this because I don't want to listen to him say that.
I don't blame you. But apparently everyone else in the room besides Mark has seen it. At least according to him.
So that's a thing that he does? He just shows people his penis?
I mean, maybe it's only if asked, but evidently everybody but Mark in that room has seen it, according to Kincaid.
He seems like the type,
Yeah.
Will's gonna get canceled to keep showing people pictures of his dick.
We're only going to seek PhDs and professionals who have a Christian background.
There it is.
Oh, here we go.
There it is.
Because we know that there's a better chance that they're going to make an honest decision as opposed to one that is going to align their pockets.
Yeah, or that's ideologically motivated.
Right. Yeah. The ideological motivation. There's no moral hazard to that at all. It's only they're either motivated. They have to tell the truth because otherwise Papa Jesus will be angry at them, or they're in it for the money. Those are the only two motivators for professionals.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Christian background. So that's how we dealt with it.
It doesn't mean Christians won't line their pockets. There's plenty that do that. But you've got a better chance of getting treated fairly by a Christian than you have by an atheist. I'm not saying...
Really? This is coming from a guy...
I would love to see that study.
Jill is a guy that has done entire videos making fun of people like Creflo Dollar.
Yeah.
And Kenneth Copeland for being...
Which you should.
Yeah, you should. But it's like now he's here saying this. Like, no, come on, man. Come on now.
Yeah. I'm not like massively better. I mean, there's still a lot of dickhead Christians out there, man.
I'd like to circle around to something that was said on Gur's stream the other day when the trans issue was brought up. Kat, who's a trans friend of mine, Q knows her, Praise probably knows her, Jill definitely does. She said something on the Trusty 8 podcast that because everyone in the room was basically giving their conception of what being pro-trans means, because I think Cerberus Hex had asked the question in the room. And Kat said that basically she just doesn't want anybody legislating against her existence, and that she just wanted to be left alone, and that's what she...
Dude, that's what...
I feel like I'm fine with that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but most of us want. But the thing is, most of us want that. It's not like every single one of us are on Twitter saying, "Hey, if you don't support fucking trans, I'm going to take an AK-47 and shove it up your ass."
Yeah, the Twitterati is definitely a problem.
Actually, they were saying that. Actually, that's what they were saying. It's
so,
who?
Yeah, no, nobody was saying that.
every single one of us said that. I'd like you to go to my Twitter and find that.
Of course, not every single one.
The trans people that I know in real life don't give a shit about the Twitterati issue. That's.
But the fact.
Yeah, nobody gives a damn about the Twitterati issue until somebody says something on Twitter that these guys start clutching their pearls over.
Exactly.
God, I wish these guys could stay consistent for even just like 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes. Try not to say something that just like contradicts something that you said before. Holy damn. Well, do you want to wrap this up here?
Yeah, I think we can. Honestly, the rest of it calms down a lot. I mean, it's still a whole bunch of Jill being a dipshit. But
yeah, and I mean, as far as like the exchange, I mean, I think like as far as like at this point, I think we just end up making the same points over again. That like they're obviously they don't understand what the verb transition means when they're using it. They're conflating that with everything from wearing the wrong clothes to getting surgery. Clearly, they don't. They want to present what they think is like hard data on a subject that's not well understood, even by some professionals.
Well, and there is no hard data for what they're saying.
Yeah, it's just not it's not as clear cut as they're trying to make it. And then on top of that, they're conflating multiple trans issues with other disorders and trying to say that they're either related, caused by, it's just like. And at no point in this in that tug of war can one person like Mark, or even two people, Mark and Q, kind of get through that just barrage of stupidity.
Real quick, so Dustin in the chat brought up the Bud Light thing. I saw the best take on it ever, which was Anheuser-Busch doesn't need to be doing this, right? In the sense of, if this is the first woman you're putting on your cans, like, really? What about like Mother Teresa or, someone like that? Maybe not Mother Teresa, but Joan of Arc, right? So, yeah, Anheuser-Busch is being ridiculous. Also, for all those people who are boycotting Bud Light because of it, yeah, welcome to joining the rest of us who already were boycotting Bud Light because it's shitty beer. And you care too much about it too.
Is it weird to me, like when I first heard about it, I just saw the tweet video of Kid Rock. He's like machine gunning some Bud Light cans. He's like, "Fuck you, Anheuser-Busch. Fuck you, Bud Light." I'm like, "What the hell? What? Oh no, Bud Light and Kid Rock broke up. No."
Yeah.
And then I track it down and I'm like, "Who's Dylan Mulvaney?" I didn't know who she was. And then I see it and I'm like, oh, okay. And I immediately jumped to the conclusion, I'm like, oh, is Bud Light doing this because there's like a pride? Is there like a pride thing coming up? And I don't know if there was. I just assumed that,
I don't think so. They hired her as a spokesperson.
Okay. Yeah. And so I was like, all right. And I think that the whole thing was around the idea of like 365 days being a woman or something like that. That was kind of a celebration of. So I was like, oh, okay, well, that's what it is. All right, well, that's fine. I just figured it was going to be some kind of cynical, like, hey, there's a gay pride parade coming up. We're going to put a trans activist out here.
And here's the big thing: the cans that they put Dylan Mulvaney on, they never put them on the shelves. They sent her some cans of Bud Light with her picture on it. That was it.
Yeah, but it was weird. It was interesting because there were people making videos as if that was what they were getting. I buy my can now. It's got Dylan Mulvaney's face on. I'm like, I don't think that's true.
It's not.
what I thought was really delicious about the whole thing, pun intended, was that there were these videos of these guys like, not my kitchen, and they're pulling out boxes and bottles of Bud Light, taking them out of their garage, taking them out of their rec rooms, and replacing them with Coors. And I was like, Coors is sponsoring the 2023 Denver Pride Parade. It's called the 2023 Coors Denver Pride Parade. Like they're the official sponsor of the whole thing. Like,
well, but as we've already noted, I mean, consistency is not really their strong point.
But I can't wait until that comes up because I think it's set for like the end of June. Yeah, it's right before.
That's usually
and it's going to be
our Pride Parade's usually the end of June. It's one of the biggest in the country too.
Yeah, and that's kind of in and around where my birthday is, so it's like great. So I've kind of put a mental note in my calendar, like, all right, here's the thing. Sometime around my birthday, I expect to see outrage tweets about Coors and in advance.
Hey, on the upside, it'll give you, material.
Yeah,
do like a birthday show.
I'll be drinking Coors. I can't bring myself to do it though. I just
don't do it.
I can't.
Most people here in Colorado can't stand Coors. They poison the water. They're awful.
Yeah, when I was younger, Coors was not a bad beer as far as cheap beers went.
Right.
But now there's so much better beer out there. It's like
that's still not. That still isn't expensive.
Yeah, it's like I think you can get stuff like stuff from the Midwest, like Shorts and Founders. I think.
I mean, even Shock Pop's pretty cheap.
Yeah, most of these are, and they're much better. And I'm not a big beer drinker. I think I drink beer maybe once a year. I don't drink a lot of it. If I drink, it's usually like I don't even drink a lot of wine. If I drink, it's usually sipping on something like whiskey or mezcal, something like that.
I can't do the mezcal.
I got one recently. It actually got accidentally featured in my last video, and it was it's interesting. I've never tasted anything quite like it. And I haven't had mezcal since 2005. I didn't even know it was really like it was becoming kind of a thing. There's like these craft mezcals out, and I was like, well, that's interesting. And then I was like, well, what's the difference? And this guy was like, well, tequila is like steamed. It can only be made out of one kind of plant, like a blue agave. You can only do that one kind, and it can only be made in like 5 places. Like mezcal can be made anywhere. It's made out of the same plant, but it can be made out of different strains of it, and they usually smoke it. And I was like, smoked, eh? Well,
that's interesting.
Despite the fact that I don't inhale smoke, I do like drinking smoky flavored things. And this one was definitely
and that's
high on that.
Why I can't do the mezcal is because for whatever reason, anything with agave in it just gives me a splitting headache and puts me in a really bad mood.
Really?
Which is a bad combination with a drink that lowers your inhibitions and impulse control.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting.
So I stick with bourbon, Scotch.
That's usually my weakness is Scotch or Irish whiskey. Yeah. All right, folks. Well, I guess we're going to wrap it up there. So if you want to watch the rest of this, like I said, we only made it through about 43 minutes of it. And less than that.
And I think it's like 2.5 hours long.
Yeah. And I don't imagine Jill or Jason or Praise or Will are going to become any more enlightened by the time it's over. But
no.
Thanks for reminding me about its existence, Wilberforce. And you were quite insistently like, yeah, we need to highlight this bullshit. I'm like, all right, agreed. let's make that a Saturday morning stream. So
it was insanity. So
yeah, it is. It's just, and props to Mark for going in there. Holy shit! But yeah, I don't think he'll be able to. I don't think he'll be able to keep that up for much longer. I think he'll burn out from that kind of activity quickly.
Yeah.
Although maybe not. He doesn't shy away from.
He's very good at it.
Yeah, he likes to get in there and kind of mix it up. I don't see, even when he gets worked up like he does in this one a little bit, he doesn't get like lose it.
Right.
I've had some where I have lost it. But Oh, Bond says this is the stream Olive goes nuts at later on, I think.
Oh, that's right. Olive flips are lit. Yeah. There was a follow-up video actually that Mark posted. It was a different conversation on the same subject, and actually referred to this video. And what's her name? Stephanie. I don't know if you're familiar with her. I can't remember what her screen name is, but she's a trans woman. And yeah, she went ballistic on some of these, chuckle fucks. And rightly so.
Well, there's Olive talking right there. I wonder what. Let's just play this and see if this is the part where she's losing it.
Take your dick and shove it up your ass.
Or what? Or what?
Holy, is that it, Hunt? I'm guessing that's it.
Yeah.
Yikes. Jesus.
Pretty much. It devolves even worse. Like what we've already heard is better than where the rest of it goes.
and still, I mean, and this is like the lowest viewership I think I've gotten. Although with a Monday morning when it's hard to know, but yeah, there were more people. It's dropped down to like 60 or in the 50s because this is always a touchy subject, and it's a touchy subject whether you're right wing or left wing. Everybody's got kind of a take on this, but like, yeah, for me, it's worth going through this because I think just some of these, when they're trying to make claims about kids transitioning and what that automatically entails, it's like, look, I understand that people have differences of opinion about how this is going to work. Medically, it's a very difficult issue. Psychologically, it is a very difficult issue to wrap your head around. But when you just start throwing kids in there and say, hey, this is happening to kids, A, B, and C are happening to kids, and this is bad, and we got to stop it right now. And it's like, and that's not exactly what's going on. That kind of shit leads to people getting hurt. And that's the shit that's going to stop. It doesn't matter what position you're in. Like, stop ginning this stuff up. Because if you do this, you're going to paint this already marginalized group of people as being, and anyone that wants to like help them as being some kind of like invading enemy force that needs to be stopped, at any cost. It's like that kind of rhetoric needs to stop.
Exactly. Honestly, the best I've seen, and it's only like a 10 or 12 minute video. Dave Farina, Professor Dave Explains.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, the best, most concise, most accurate breakdown of the whole issue.
Yeah, I remember because he kind of starts. Is that the one where he starts out the video? Is like, here's where people on the right get this wrong. Here's where people on the left get wrong.
Yeah,
it's like trying to lay out the medical science around it and the psychological consensus on it. Yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah, for anybody, I should probably put that in there as a reference, as a resource. But anyway.
Yeah.
That's so check out Mark Reed's channel if you guys are interested in watching the rest of this. I would understand, and I'm sure Mark would understand if you don't want to delve deeper into this into this cesspool. But yeah, thanks Wilberforce for bringing this up to me. This has been fun. I'm going to get out of here and enjoy the sun is kind of shining outside, so I'm going to get out and enjoy it. And yeah.
Alrighty. Well, thanks for having me on, and it's been fun.
Yeah, you can stick around. I'll take this offline. For everybody that's out there, thanks for any super chats. I think I had one or two. Thank you very much. I always appreciate those. Thanks to everybody else.
Should have been more.
It's fine. It's fine. As long as I don't get my channel yeeted, I'll be happy.
There's that.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah, let's just hope. Yeah, if I have to unlist this, everyone will know why. Like, what happened to that video that you and Wilberforce did? I'll just be like, what do you think?
Right.
But yeah, with that being said, everybody take care. Have a great weekend, or a great rest of your weekend, if that's the case. And I will catch you all hopefully sometime next week. We'll see you all later.
That was fun.